Haya, huyo msivigeni makofi, ataniambia jina yake nitasema. Kutoka hapo nataka pia kutambua county commissioner wetu. Tafadhali inua mkono, wananchi wakujue. Chipukizi pia ako area, pia yeye mpigieni makofi. Haya, sawa sawa. Sasa nataka kutambua pia, nimeona deputy governor, former deputy governor wetu anaitwa David Kariuki. Na your excellency, huyu ni kijana wako, ako sawa sana na hesabu. Ukiona mahali kuna hesabu inaweza fanywa nzuri, this is your guy. Shika yeye mkono tafadhali, your excellency. Wacha nitambulishe our MCAs. Na nianze na Mheshimiwa Kobole, Mheshimiwa wa Mbeti North, Mheshimiwa Masharia wa kule Ngienda, mpigieni makofi. Mheshimiwa Karuri wa kutoka kule Kidhimu. Mheshimiwa Morin ametoka, huyo ni nominated MCA wetu. Mheshimiwa Susan pia yeye asimame apigiwe makofi, nominated MCA. Na kwa niaba ya hao wote ningetaka kupea nafasi MCA wetu wa area hii dakika moja, Mheshimiwa Swalex akuje aseme jambo kwa niaba ya watu wa Dallas. Karibu sana Mheshimiwa.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mokonji, my friend, Your Excellency, the Deputy President wa Taifa la Kenya, Your Excellency, the Governor of Embu County, all protocols observed. Your Excellency, naomba tu kwa dakika moja ni kushukuru kwa niaba ya wakazi wa Dallas. Your Excellency, it is historical. Ni mara ya kwanza kuwa na naibu wa rais katika mtaa wa Dallas wa mabanda. Na tunashukuru kwa niaba ya St. Antony, Your Excellency, sio jambo la kawaida, lakini leo tunajisikia kwamba sisi pia tuko ndani ya serikali. Kweli uongo? Tuko ndani ya serikali. Your Excellency, is the first time the people of Dallas and the people of Embu County wanasikia wako ndani ya serikali, na tujipigie makofi watu wetu. Kwa uchache kabisa, Your Excellency, ningependa kusema kwa mimi ni Muislamu. It is also historical, Your Excellency, kwamba Dallas ama Kiremare Ward ndio iko na makanisa mengi zaidi katika county ya Embu. Vile vile ndio iko na Wakristo wengi zaidi, lakini wamechagua Muislamu mara 3 katika uongozi. Tujipigie makofi. It's a clear indication, Your Excellency, kwamba watu wa Embu Town hatuna ubaguzi, tunaangalia kiongozi na wala dini zetu ama siasa zetu hazitupeleki na mirengo ya kidini. Excellency, jambo la pili ningependa kuomba, Your Excellency, ni kwamba watu wa Dallas, wakati, Your Excellency, tutafika kwamba nchi yetu itaongeza constituency, Your Excellency, former provincial headquarters ambayo haina township constituency, Your Excellency, tungeomba wakati tutapata kwa nchi yetu ya Kenya tupewe pia constituency ambayo ni township constituency, watu wetu wapate kuongozwa na wapate nafasi katika nchi yetu. Your Excellency, vile vile ningependa nikuambie area hii iko na makanisa mingi karibu, lakini Your Excellency, tuko na sewage hapa, Your Excellency. Ningeomba, Your Excellency, governor wetu amejaribu sana, na vile vile pia mjumbe wetu, hii sewage, Your Excellency, ukiweza kutupatia, Excellency, tupeleke mbali kando na makanisa, itatusaidia sana, Your Excellency. Ya mwisho kabisa, Your Excellency, na vijana wengi sana hapa jua kali. Ukiingia hapa, Your Excellency, ni matope. Your Excellency, najua tuko na kitita cha serikali. Excellency, ikiwezekana hii shade za jua kali tuweze kupata cabros, na pia vile vile tuweze kupata shade, watu wetu faidika. Your Excellency, kwa sababu ya muda, mimi ningependa nikushukuru sana, na kwa niaba ya bunge la Embu County, kama naibu wa Speaker, Your Excellency, I want to tell you that we trust in your government. We are comfortable with what is happening. We trust our governor. We trust the leadership of Embu County. Yako kwamba bunge la kaunti ya Embu wakati huu likiongezwa na gavana wetu, tumeamua kufanya kazi pamoja ili watu wa Embu County waweze kusaidika. Lastly, Your Excellency, nimeambiwa na Speaker wa Embu County nitoe apologies ya wabunge ambao hawako hapa na wamesema wanakungoja pande ya Runyenjes, Your Excellency. Thank you so much and God bless you. Karibu Kenya.
Mpigieni makofi tena Mheshimiwa Swalex. Your Excellency, pia tuko na bahati leo. Hii kitongoji ya Dallas tumekuja na wabunge wengi sana. Na najua tutapata nafasi ile upande ingine kusema kitu kwa sababu pale tutakuwa sasa ile maneno ya mwisho. Lakini kwa sababu pia ni muhimu wananchi wawajue, ningetaka wabunge wote pamoja na senators wakuje hapa mbele tafadhali, kwa sababu ya muda. Tafadhali niweze kuwa introduce mkisalimia watu. Na mkimbie kwa sababu tunakimbianga kule bunge sana. Mimi ni silver medalist, kwa hivyo kujeni mbio tafadhali. Haya, nataka kuanza na wabunge wale wametoka area zingine. Tuko hapa na Honorable Kituru, mbunge wa Nandi Hills. Mpigieni makofi. Tuko hapa na women rep wa Kericho, Mheshimiwa Beatrice Kemei. Mpigieni makofi. Tuko hapa na mtu anaitwa Johana Ngeno. Johana Ngeno ni chairman wa housing na tumekuja na yeye hapa before, na pia ni mbunge wa area inaitwa Emruadi Kill. Mpigieni makofi watu ya Dallas. Tuko hapa na mtu anaitwa Nimrod Bai, mbunge wa kule Kitui West. Mpigieni makofi tafadhali. Pale mwisho kabisa naona mheshimiwa rafiki yangu, mheshimiwa wa kule Kiambu, women rep wa Kiambu anaitwa wa Muradha. Mpigieni makofi. Tuko na mheshimiwa Gakuya, mbunge wa kule kunaitwa Embakasi North. Mpigieni makofi. Kule mbunge tunamuitanga Bazu. Haya, sawa sawa, tuko kwa county. Sasa nataka kwa dakika moja mtu ajiintroduce bila kuongea kitu kingine, ndio tuelekee kwako Mheshimiwa Karemba. Usiharibu time. Very quickly.
Asante sana, Your Excellency, the Deputy President, Your Excellency, the Governor of Embu County, viongozi wote ambao mko hapa, wa Kristo, wa hapa Dallas. Tumsifu Yesu Kristo. Tukumie Yesu Kristo. Muriega. Mimi naitwa Mushangi Karemba. Mimi ni mbunge wa kule Runyenjes na Mheshimiwa Mukoji ni rafiki yangu. Aliniuliza kama kabla naibu wa rais akuje kwangu anaweza pitia hapa Dallas. Nikakumbuka nyinyi ni marafiki zangu pia. Nikasema wacha apitia hapa, lakini nimekaa pale kuweka masaa. Kwa hivyo malizeni haraka tuchukue yeye tuende na yeye Runyenjes. Mungu awabariki.
Haya, women rep wetu Mheshimiwa Daboen, asante sana, najua ulikuwa na issue ya familia. Karibu sana, salimia watu wako.
Kisema mambo ya familia, watu wanaweza sema mambo mengine, lakini ni mtoto wako mzuri. Your Excellency the Deputy President and our Governor, Honorable Sisi Mbarire, all protocols observed. Muriega, Bwana asifiwe. Tumukumie Yesu Kristo. Your Excellency the Deputy President, tumefurahia kuja kwako na tunaomba ya kwamba ukipata nafasi nyingine, Embu County is the county of many opportunities. Kwa hivyo tena na tena na tena. Lakini jambo moja tu utaniruhusu nimwambie ama nikumbushe, turaenda kindu gitagwa Inua Jamii program. Na turaregister andu a miaka 70 and above. Lakini Your Excellency, andu aria maina mawathe mateabewa fresh registration. koguo ningivwa nao marorue nigetha kukura kwenda fresh registration ya andu aria maina wawathe kana PWDs. Ngai ni amurathime na mwike wega bitagwa WN. Thank you.
Pigieni makofi WN. Sasa ule jamaa mrefu kabisa pitisha yeye ndio aweze kuongea. Ruku wa Mbeere North. Karibu.
Your Excellency the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua, Your Excellency Madam Governor of Embu, Honorable Cecily Mutito Mbarire, viongozi wote ambao tuko nao wabunge na Wakristo wote, tumsifu Yesu Kristo. Tukumie Yesu Kristo. Yesu Kristo athanage kanitha mbega muci mwega unene wa Jesu raoka. Niĩ nĩ Mkatoliki mũkinyanĩru kabisa. Your Excellency, mimi ni Mkatoliki na ndio maana sisi tukiwa Katoliki hiyo lazima tufanye hiyo mzuri ili tusikie tuko nyumbani kabisa. Your Excellency, mimi kama mbunge wa Mbeere North, huyu kijana huyu alisema fomu ni kujituma. Mimi wakati mlitengeneza serikali mkiwa na William Samoei Ruto, nikaona kuna fitina kidogo inaingia hapo, nikasema nitajituma. Kila asubuhi mapema station hii naenda hii kuhakikisha ya kwamba serikali itasimama. Your Excellency, unajua ile siafu sinaweza chukua mayai na sipepe na sipeleke kwa msitu, na siafu ni kitu kidogo sana. So everything that can help in ensuring that the government of the Republic of Kenya is stable and the people feel that they have a stable government, hiyo lazima tufanye. Hiyo kazi Your Excellency mimi nimefanya mwaka mzima, nikajituma kabisa na nitaendelea kufanya hiyo kazi, because we have as members of parliament, we have some people call themselves political analysts ambao wanaamuka asubuhi kutusi serikali, na tusipoingia pale pia kuwakanya. Zile ziafu unaweza kuta zimepepa na zimeondoa serikali katika ile mpangilio inayopasa. Mimi niko hapo Your Excellency kushikilia wewe pamoja na William Samoei Ruto ili serikali yetu ikae imara, na hiyo ingine mingi tutaongea huko Runyenjes. Mambo ni mingi, na pia hapa Embu County Your Excellency tumeamua Embu lazima isimame. Hakuna vita utasikia ikiwa imetoka hapa Embu County. Najua kunaweza kuwa na watu hapa ambao wangetaka kuweka fitina kidogo, lakini lazima tushikane kama viongozi wa Embu County. Yale ambayo inawafanyika huko Meru na kaunti zingine isije ikafanyika hapa, tukue kitu kimoja. Ndio tumeona vita ambayo ilikuwa hapo 2013 2022, hiyo sio kitu ya maana na tutataka ionekane hapa Embu County. Kwa hivyo tutafanya kazi tukiwa kitu moja kama viongozi. Asante sana, kushukuru Your Excellency.
Mpigieni makofi Mheshimiwa Ruku. Asante sana kwa kujituma Mheshimiwa Ruku. Sasa tuko na mbunge wa Mbeere South, Nabat Muriuki engineer. Mpigieni makofi ya wasalimie.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, Your Excellency, the Governor, Cecily Mutito Mbarire, waheshimiwa wote wale wako hapa, viongozi wa serikali na Wakristo nyote. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Engineer Nabat, lakini nimefurahia ile neno tumepewa na Father. Bwana akubariki Father. Your Excellency, yangu ni very brief. Na kushukuru sana. Inaonekana tunakupenda sana. Last weekend, Your Excellency, nilikuwa nimekualika huko Keretie, lakini hukuweza kufika na ukanituma, na watu wa Keretire ACK walifurahi sana na wakatoa shukrani mingi sana kwako. Mimi sikujua hii weekend pia ulikuwa umealikwa Embu na ulikubali kuja, na pia umekuwa hijacked na Mkoji na ukikubali kupitia hapa. Hiyo ni kuonyesha upendo mkubwa sana kwa watu wa Embu, na sisi watu wa Embu tunakupenda sana. Kwa hivyo ukiona tukikuita tena, kubali kunja, sisi ni wako. Watu wa Keretiro waliniambia hivi, hata ingawa walifurahi sana ulinituma, jaribu ukunje uwasalimie. Your presence is very important. They want to see you. They want to shake your hand. Kwa hivyo nakualika Keretire tena, nitakufanyia mpango ukunje huko ukuwe na watu wako. Na walitoa shukrani mingi. Nikimalizia, Your Excellency, wacha nirudie hiyo maneno ya unity. Embu County tuko pamoja, tuko na unity. Mimi ni wa independent, watu wengine hapa Embu County ni wa UDA, wengine ni wa Azimio, lakini tunafanya kazi tukiwa kitu moja. Tulisema uchaguzi ulikwisha, sasa ni kufanya kazi, na tunakushukuru vile umetushikilia zote. Bwana Yesu abarikiwe. Thank you.
Asante Mheshimiwa Muriuki. Sasa tuko na senator wetu tunapenda sana, Senator Mondi Gitonaga, wacha ahutubie watu wake. Karibu sana.
Deputy President, our sister Governor Cecily Mutito Mbarire, MPs, Women Rep na wageni wote na pia watu wa Embu County. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Muriega. Majina yangu naitwa Alexander Munyi Mundigi. Kaba Mundigi tuwe kagatia. Kaba Mundigi tuwe kagatia. Yangu bosi wetu Embu County, agenda yetu ni mambo ya unity, governor, senator, women rep na MP na MCA 30. Kwa sababu ya kipindi ya miaka 10 tumekuwa na vita, lakini kwa hii kipindi ya miaka 5 kwa sababu ya serikali ya Kenya Kwanza tumesema Embu County tukiwa tumeongozwa na mama tutafanya kazi na tutatembea safari moja. Ya pili, Embu County hakuna vita, hataki kusikia kama ile mambo iko Meru ama ile iko Kisii ama ile iko Kericho ama ile iko Kiambu. Sisi na mama tuko sawa, haikuja pale ile vitu inaenda Meru kama watasikizana, tunakuomba ikunje Embu. Ya mwisho, agenda yetu Embu County inafaa iwe city kama zile zingine kama Mombasa na Nairobi, na umetujengea modern market. Kwa hivyo tunakurequest ukifika kule mambo ya barabara iwe kutoka Nairobi mpaka Makutano unakuja na lisali moja, lakini kutoka Makutano kwenda Embu kwenda Meru unaenda masaa 3. Kwa hiyo tunakuomba hata sisi tuengelezwe ipanuliwe iwe kubwa. Ya pili, mambo ya city mpaka tuko hapa na sewerage system imeleta shinda. Ni aibu Embu County inaonekana face of county, hiyo tusaidie iweze kupelekwa pale nyingine. Ya mwisho, hatuwezi kuwa na city kama hatuna uwanja wa ndege. Hapa tuko na miraa, tuko na majani na avocado, na tunataka hata sisi tunataka kusherehekea tukienda Nairobi na ndege na Mombasa, kwa sababu siku hizi Embu County inapepea vizuri. Kwa hivyo tuangaliwe. Wakati tulienda kwa director wa Airways alisema hapa hatuna uwanja, wataka 500 acres. Kwa hivyo tunakuomba ukifika kule tuweze kuangaliwa ni upande gani na pesa itatoka wapi. Asanti. Ni mimi senator wenu Alexander Munyimundi. Kama mndikiteka gatia. Asanti, tuparikiwe.
Pigieni makofi Mondiki tena. Pia mimi maneno, na kwanza kabisa mimi nataka kukushukuru kwa sababu ya kupitia hapa Dallas. You have left a mark in this place and it will never be forgotten. Your Excellency, pia nataka kukushukuru tena kwa sababu sababu you have taken it deliberately to mentor young leaders. Mimi, Mheshimiwa Karemba, Mheshimiwa wao wengine, Daboen, kila mtu umechukua sisi, umetufanya watoto wako maneno ya uongozi, na mimi nataka kuambia watu tuko na mentor mzuri under His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua. Tunataka kusema asante. Your Excellency, hawa watu wameona maneno mingi sana imefanyika in the last 1 year. Lakini kuna kitu hawajui. The biggest lobbyist wa project zetu huku Embu, the biggest lobbyist, ule mwenye hawezi lala Embu kama haijapata kitu yake, is His Excellency the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Rigathi Gachagua. And Your Excellency, through your support and your lobbying and your push, tumeweza kupata maneno mingi sana huku. Ya kwanza, Your Excellency, ni hii stadium kubwa tumejengewa hapa ambayo tunaona ni maua. Siku hizi, Your Excellency, I want to report to you that every weekend we have a football tournament ambayo karibu hiyo uwanja ijae. Na 1 year ago, hiyo stadium ulikuwa unapita pale unafunga macho kwa sababu ya vile inakaa vibaya. Your Excellency, through your lobbying and pushing, na nataka hao watu waelewe, tumeweza kutoa na kupata market moja kubwa hapa town ambayo ni ya 700 million Kenya shillings. Moja kubwa sana. Tumeweza kupata market zingine mingi katika constituency different, and also the lobbying of Our Excellency the Governor. Kwa sababu tukitembea kupiga maofisi, tunatembea pamoja. Your Excellency, tunataka uendelee kushikilia sisi hivyo, kwa sababu wewe ndio unatuelewa zaidi, na wewe ndio tunatambua kama route mzuri ya kufikia rasilimali yetu ya serikali. Kumekuwa na mvua kali sana, and Your Excellency, wale watu wa pale jua kali hawajaweza kufanya kazi hii wiki yote, kwa sababu hiyo area yao iko matope na gari hata haiwezi ingia. Mimi nakusii kwa unyenyekevu, kama kijana wako wa mkono, uangalie vile unaweza fanya, tufanyie hawa watu cabros, tuwawekee shade mzuri, wafanye kazi if is possible 24/7, waweze kupata rasilimali yao ya kuendelea kimaisha. Your Excellency, pia mimi nataka kushukuru because it is for the first time watu wameona mbele katika maneno ya agriculture. And Your Excellency, I know you have taken days and night ukijaribu kustreamline agriculture yetu. Saa hizi wakulima wa kahawa, they have a lot of hope because wameona vile maneno inataka kuendelea. Wakulima wetu wa maziwa, wakulima wetu wa majani chai, wote wamenyenyekea kwa sababu wanajua you are coming to rescue them, na umeweza kufanya hivyo kwa sababu wewe mwenyewe unaelewa mkulima na unaelewa vile maneno inaweza endelea. Your Excellency, nataka kukuomba tena, kuna kitongoji kwa hapa inaitwa Old Stadium, na watu wako na shamba ya 10 acres, imefanywa subdivision, lakini hawana pesa ya kufanya titling. Na najua kuna ile maneno ya serikali ile mnaweza saidia wao wapate titles ili waweze kukua wako sawa na wanajua wana own kitu. Ningeomba Your Excellency, ukiweza kusaidia hapo itakuwa mzuri. Your Excellency, pia I know you remember tumetembea na wewe mahali inaitwa Njukiri Stadium. Ile mahali tulikuwa tumesema tunataka kujenga the state of art sport complex. Hiyo dream bado Your Excellency tuko nayo, na sisi ni watu wa kujituma. Tunataka kunyenyekea na wewe uendelee kusukuma rais, tushikane kama viongozi wa Embu tuweze kupata hiyo stadium pale, na vijana wetu pia waweze kufuata kazi. Your Excellency, kuna mahali tulienda na wewe inaitwa Kidhemo. Hiyo area ni ward mzima bila hata 1 kilometer of tarmac, na tukawaambia hao watu ya kwamba hata ikichukua muda gani lazima waanze kupata lami. kuna barabara hapo inaitwa Ena Kidhemo Ndato, inakuja tena inarudi Kivwe, inarudi tena mahali inaitwa inaitwa wapi? Carolina, then inaenda mahali inaitwa Kangaru. Hiyo barabara, Your Excellency, hiyo ndiyo barabara mimi nataka kukuomba uweze kutusaidia kupata tarmac hiyo barabara, kwa sababu tukipata hiyo tutafurahia sana. Your Excellency, wamekuja kushikana na mimi, pia nataka kuambia asanti, kwa sababu we don't take it for granted, na tutaweza kujibu in kind when the time is right. One of the things I've learned from you, Your Excellency, is the fact that you give 100% support to His Excellency the President. And it is biblical that you honor your bosses na wa support popote pale. And I've learned one thing from you, that kama unataka kupanda ngazi, lazima uheshimu wale watu wamekalia hiyo ngazi unataka kupanda. Sasa tutaendelea hivyo na viongozi wa Embu, they are your people, na tuendelee kushikana pamoja. Sasa kwa sababu ya muda, I want to invite Her Excellency the Governor of Embu County. Mpigieni makofi, mbwembwe na nderemo wakikuja kutubia. Welcome.
Asante sana, Your Excellency the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, the Area Member of Parliament, the Senator, Women Rep, MP for Runyenjes, MP for Mbeere South and Mbeere North, our visiting members of Parliament, viongozi wote wa serikali kuu, CAS Mushiri and all the chairmen of parastatals here present, our members of the County Assembly, Father Jeremiah and the entire clergy, na wananchi watukufu wa St. Antony, hamjambo? Moyaro ngetheka isi arerare, Bwana asifiwe. God is good and all the time. Asante sana, tumeshukuru sana kuwa hapa siku ya leo. And I want to take this opportunity, Your Excellency, on behalf of Embu County, to welcome you once again to Embu County. Wewe ni kijana wetu, wewe ni kiongozi wetu, and when we see you, we know we have a fighter for the people of Embu County. Mpigieni makofi. Andu a Embu ningenda kumwira ngoretwo ni mutongoria ni MP miaka 20. Na sababu nataka kusema hivi ni kwamba for the 20 years I've been a member of parliament, sijaona serikali ambayo imeangalia watu wa Embu kama serikali ya William Samoei Ruto. Na nitawaambia kwa nini. In one year, President William Ruto amekuja Embu 3 times. In 1 year, including today, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya has been here 4 times. In 1 year, we have had 10 cabinet secretaries, mawaziri kutoka serikali kuu wamekuja katika Embu County. In the last 10 years, Your Excellency, we never had a visit by the President of the Republic of Kenya. In the last 10 years. Alikuja kutuitisha kura na akakuja mazishi siku moja. We never saw him again. Please, we are happy to see that we have a president and a deputy who care for Embu County. May God bless you. Your Excellency, I know you know that Embu County ilishikilia president na wewe for 5 years we were the leading county na opinion poll katika Mount Kenya yote. For 5 years. Tulikuwa tunaongoza katika kura za maoni za kushikilia President William Ruto. And I want to appreciate because of that, mumetuchukua kama county yenu. You have given us 7 chairmen of parastatals. You have given us a cabinet administrative secretary, Mheshimiwa Mushiri, and you have given us a permanent secretary. You have also given us directors in various parastatals. Lakini najua serikali yenu haijajaa. We still want somebody in foreign affairs as Embu County. Kanatia, nitorenda ambassador. We have not had ambassadors Embu County for the last 10 years. The last time we had an ambassador ilikuwa wakati wa President Mwai Kibaki. Tafadhali tukumbukeni hapo. But I want to thank you, Your Excellency, and Mheshimiwa Mkonji has mentioned it, to thank you because you are the biggest champion of the people of Embu. All these appointments, you have personally pushed them at the national government. Mpigieni makofi jameni. Nigetha mwerewe, appointments yonde murona igekeka guku Embu, mundu uria tunyitagirira naga isukuma ni Deputy President Gachagua. Horaika rubikeni. I also want to thank you, Your Excellency, kwa sababu tangu nikuwe governor, kama kuna mtu amenishika mkono akanipeleka kwa kile ofisi nataka, including kwa president mwenyewe, ni wewe. And I want to say this, Your Excellency. The reason I continue to support you and the president is because Embu County lost 10 precious years. Miaka 10 tulipitwa na mambo mingi sana ya development. Kwa hivyo nimeamua na tunaitumia vile inatakikana. Ile imebaki national government, endelea kunishika mkono na kushika viongozi wengine mkono, tuweze kuleta ile imebaki Nairobi ikuje Embu, ndio tuweze kufikia counties zingine. And because of that, I repeat once again, thank you. Ulinishika mkono tukaweza kupata hii stadium, ukanishika mkono tukapata hii soko ya Embu ya 700 million. And I want to report to you, Your Excellency, the day before yesterday, we handed over the site to the new contractor wa soko ya Embu, ile ambayo itakuwa na stalls 3,000. Ako kwa site mobilizing, anaanza kazi. Pigeni makofi. Pia Mheshimiwa Mkonji ametaja hiyo masoko yote. We did public participation. Tuko na soko 7 markets ambazo tumeshikana na national government. Pesa inatoka national government, tutengeneze, tumalize hizo soko 7. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, I also want to mention that kuna barabara mingi na kila mheshimiwa ukimuuliza barabara ya kwake wanaelewa. And we fully support the construction of those roads. In every constituency, tulichukua 1 priority road as advised by the area member of parliament. Then overall, at the county level, tukachukua completion of the Embu Ring Road, ambayo imebaki tu pande ya Mbere South, hata hiyo imaliziwe, ndio tuweze kufungua Mwea Game Reserve to the tourists wawe wakija hapa Embu County. Pia, Your Excellency, katika hiyo stadium unakumbuka the president and yourself promised the people of Embu Njokere Stadium. Tumeenda huko mara mingi, hata wewe mwenyewe tumeenda na wewe. And I know the president has said tungojee tu a little while tuweze kuona lini itaanza, but I want to urge you as the champion of the people of Embu, please push the Njokere Stadium for us. We still need it very much. We want to thank you for the 1,600 CHPs ambao mumechukua kama serikali kuu. You're paying 50% of the allowance. County government is paying 50%. I want to tell you, they are down to work. We start training of all those CHPs from next week. We are collaborating with the Ministry of Public Health, and they are ready and very happy that finally there's a government that has taken note of the great work they do in the villages. So we support that, Your Excellency. We want to thank you for the County Aggregation and Industrial Park. Sijui kama mnajua kule Mashanga, Bere South, tunajenga industrial park kubwa sana. Hapo tutakuwa tunaangalia mambo ya avocado, mambo ya macadamia, mambo ya honey, mambo ya dengu, mambo ya maziwa. We are going to take care of about 8 value chains zetu, ndio tufanye value addition. Tumepatiwa na serikali kuu under the leadership of the president 250 million, na sisi Embu County tumetoa 250 million. Tushaanza kazi, Your Excellency. The work is ongoing as I speak to you, and we are happy with what is coming out. In the meantime, sisi tunapanga together even with the members of parliament how we can prepare the aggregation centers katika kila constituency, ndio tuweze kupeleka hiyo chakula yetu katika industrial park yetu. Your Excellency, umesikia umeambiwa mambo ya hii sewage. Hii sewage tangu nizaliwe niliipata hapo. Ukikuja Embu, unajua umefika Embu ukiona sewage. Hata bahati siku hizi ni vile imefunikwa kidogo na tumiti, but we used to be enjoyed kwamba that is our economic activity. Sasa, Your Excellency, we did a proposal through Tana Waterworks for Embu sewerage and water project, na ingine ya Runyenje sewerage and water project. Both of them will serve not just the sewer services but also expansion of the waterworks and infrastructure, na especially hiyo ya Embu sewerage itapeleka maji ingine Bere South. Tafadhali nataka kukuomba, kwa sababu nimesukuma hizo 2 projects, zimepita kwa ministry, it was approved, sasa iko katika ADB bank. Tafadhali na kuomba, ninyithetie pio munene wakwa, njukumira bau andu akwa matetheke. Tafadhali njukumira bau tu andu akwa matetheke. If we get those 2 projects, we will sort a lot of water problems both in Bere North and Bere South in Embu County. And Your Excellency, as I finish, I want to announce kwa watu wote, kesho mnajua ni public holiday. Kesho hakuna kwenda kazi. Tunaomba wa mundu weaba we na ciana ciaku vandai mitero ucio migundari yenyu. Tafadhali tupande miti. Hii hewa vile mnaiona ni kwa sababu tumeharibu hewa, ndio tunaambiwa tupande miti. Mnajua president anataka tupande 5 billion trees in the next 10 years. Tuanze. Kesho sisi tutakuwa na minister wa trade kule Maranga kunikutoka banda mite county event, lakini mwemuke karamesiere, hakikisha kesho umepanda muti, na sio kesho peke yake. Tuambiririe yu kuvandaga muti wa muthenya, na tuthomithie twana twetu tunini umuhimu wa kupanda miti, na mau mengi Ngai wa moyo amurathime. Na ni mwire congratulations tondu muthenya wa mwiso na iguku tugicaria kura mbere ya ithurano, na kwa ina arambe kanitha ĩno ndiakinyĩte bau ĩno akinyĩte mwĩageriu ĩgũrĩre ikaruthi. And it is a beautiful and unique church, very well designed. Thank you, Your Excellency, for accepting the calling by the area MP to come and support this great church. Hao watu walikushikilia na president vibaya sana. Kanatiguo ni mwamanyiterere. Kwa hivyo amekuja kurudisha mkono. Mpigieni Asanti sana, Mungu awabariki. Kwa sasa nataka kuchukua hii nafasi kukaribisha our Deputy President, the Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, Rigi G, akuje atusalimie. Simameni. Gemi atumia, gemi. Asante sana, Your Excellency. Karibu sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Tafadhali tuketi. Father in charge, Father Jeremiah na kanisa, Governor wetu Cecily Baride, Senator wetu Mundigi ambaye atapatikana, Women Rep wetu WN, Mheshimiwa Mkunji, Wakristo wa hapa Dallas, Muriega, tumukumie Yesu Kristo. Unene wa Yesu roka, Ngai nĩ mwega, na hĩndĩ ciothe. Ngai ndiaiciarĩra, Mwathani agocwo, Mwathani agocwo rĩngĩ. Reverend Father Jeremiah, tumeshukuru sana kwa kupata nafasi katika misa leo hapa Dallas, na kusema ukweli nilikuwa naelekea pande ya Runyenje. Huyu kijana mlichagua, huyu Mkunji, mtu ya kujituma, akanikaza sana, lazima nipitie hapa. Na hii kijana mimi nataka kumshtaki kwenu, ananisumbua sana. Mambo yote kidogo ya Manyata anako kwangu, akitoka kwangu anaenda kwa rais, akienda kwa rais anarudi, anipatie amani. Sasa nyinyi mumwambie mimi ni mzee kidogo, asinisukume sana, nisida. So saa ile Mkunji alisema tupitie hapa, nikaona inafaa kwa sababu nyinyi watu ya hapa Embu, nyinyi ni watu wenu, nyinyi ni watu wetu 100%. Na inyuĩ andũ a Embu inyuĩ ũrĩa mwatuĩkire matwĩ na president no Ngai ũkamũrĩha. Nĩ mwatuĩkire wega mũno president, nani na timu ĩno yakwa haha, mũgĩtũhoera Ngai, mũgĩtũhe kura, nĩ mwatuĩkire wega mũno, na ciugo cia kanua itingĩigana kuga nĩ thengio, tutikanoga gũcokia ngatho. Koguo andũ a kanitha ũyũ na andũ a Dallas na andũ a Embu, o rĩngĩ kuma ngoro yakwa thĩinĩ, amũkĩrai ngatho ciakwa. Kwa hivyo tumefika hapa kwa misa na pia kusaidia nyinyi, kwa sababu muko na project na unajua ni muhimu. Siku sisi tulikuwa na shida, rĩrĩa twaugire Embu nĩ mwatwĩtĩkire, katiguo ona nyuma uga Embu no nginya tumwĩtĩke. Kwa hivyo tumekuja pia kusema mlitusaidia siku tulikuwa kwa shida na tukihitaji usaidizi, na nyinyi pia mkihitaji usaidizi lazima tukue hapa. Nimeleta salamu ya kiongozi wetu Rais William Samoei Ruto. Mmepokea? Mkunji aliponisukuma nikuje hapa, nikamwambia nilikuwa naenda Runyenjes. Mkunji amesema lazima nipite Dallas hapa Manyata, akanituma na salamu na pia akanipatia mchango nilete. Watu wa Embu, kufanyiwa kazi na serikali ya William Ruto ni haki yenu. Hii ni serikali yenu. Nyinyi ndio mliunda hii serikali, ndio mlichagua William Ruto akakuwa rais. Kwa hivyo yale kazi yote tumefanya hapa ni haki yenu, na hiyo kazi bado tosha, lazima tuendelee kufanya zingine. Vile gavana amesema, tulikuja hapa Embu Stadium tukaiunda ikakuwa stadium ya kimataifa, na tukalete sherehe ya Madaraka Day, na nataka kushukuru nyinyi vile mlikaribisha rais na wageni. Tuko na project nyingine hapa Jokeri, imekwama kidogo, lakini si kukwama, ni kuipanga, tunaipanga. Tunataka tukuwe na stadium hapo ya kimataifa ambaye inaweza kuchezewa na wageni kutoka kila pahali duniani. Pia ningetaka niseme tunaendelea na marekebisho katika sekta ya kahawa, majani chai na maziwa, na tunaendelea vizuri. Wale wa jamaa ambaye wamekuwa wakinyanyasa wakulima walikuwa wameleta shida sana, hawataki kuachilia kwa sababu wamenyanyasa mkulima siku mingi, lakini mimi na rais tumeng'ang'ana na hawa. Walikuwa wamekataa hata kuja kwa soko, sisi tukatafuta pesa ya serikali 4 billion, wakikataa kununua tununulie wakulima. Sasa wameanza kurudi kwa soko kununua, na sasa tunawaambia wanunue bei juu kuliko ile ya serikali, ndio tuweze kuelewana. Na sisi hatuna ubaya na hiyo watu, shida yetu tu watupatie haki yetu. Kahawa wanauza bei iko juu sana ng'ambo, wanatupatia pesa kidogo. Tunawaambia hii faida iko katikati, tugawe na mkulima, kwa sababu mkulima havuji mkono. Sasa hiyo ndio shida tumekuwa nayo, lakini naona tunaendelea. Nimekuwa nchi ya Jerumani, nimekuwa pale Ubelgiji, na tumeanza kupata watu ambaye watakuja kuchukua kahawa direct bila kupitia kwa broker, na mkulima atapata haki yake. Kwa mambo ya chai tumeendelea vizuri. Bonus ambaye ililipwa juzi imekuwa nzuri, na tutaendelea kupata manufaa katika sekta ya majani chai. Kwa mambo ya maziwa tunaendelea na marekebisho na kuongezea bei ikuwe juu ya shilingi 50. Tuko na changamoto saa hii kwa sababu maziwa imekuwa nyingi sana, lakini serikali itaona vile tutaingilia pale ndio bei ya maziwa isteremuke kwa kiwango ambaye haifai. Pia tuko na shida ya soko ya avocado na macadamia, na hii ni kitu ambaye tunapambana naye. Mabalozi ambaye tumeteua hivi karibuni, tumewaambia katika kazi yao ile ya maana ni kwenda nchi zile wamepelekwa kutafuta soko, ikiwemo mambo ya macadamia na mambo ya avocado. Pia hapa katika Embu tuko na matatizo kwa ile sekta ya muguka, na jirani zenu hapa Meru kwa mambo ya miraa, pia ni mambo ambayo tunashughulikia. Mambo ya soko yetu hapa town tuliweka shilingi milioni 700 million inaendelea, na hiko soko zingine ambaye gavana atakuja na wajumbe tuketi ndio tusukume masoko yetu kwa sababu ya mama mboga hapa katika Embu County. Pia tungetaka tuseme mambo ya title deed. Mheshimiwa amesema, mheshimiwa utakuja ndio tuongee na minister wetu Alice Wahome tuweze kuharakisha mambo ya title deed. Lakini mambo ya jua kali hiyo mnataka kabro, hiyo gavana atafanya, hiyo ni kazi ya gavana. Gavana hawezi shindwa kuwekea vijana wetu kabro. Ukikwama utaniambia, hiyo ni kazi kidogo. Awekee kabro ndio waweze kufanya kazi sawa sawa. Mambo ya sewage hiyo maneno tutasukuma na gavana, iko kwa ADB na tutafaulu. Tutahakikisha ya kwamba tumepata nauli kupitia Tana Water Works ndio tuweze kutengeneza hii city ya Embu. Ndio mkitaka ikuwe city tukue tumefix mambo ya sewage. Hawezi kuwa city kama sewage hakuna. Lazima kwanza turekebishe haraka haraka ndio tuweze kupata ile usaidizi. Mimi nikimalizia niseme barabara hii ya Ring Road ambayo imekwama na zile zingine ambayo zimekwama. Rais amekuwa nje hivi karibuni na tumesaidika, hatutaki kusema ni njia gani. Najua hii watu ya makamera wanatufuata kila mahali, tukisema kitu wanatuanika, alafu ile watu wenye kutusaidia wanaanza kupiga kona. Hivi barabara zote zilikuwa zimeanza, tumepata usaidizi, na hivi karibuni makontrakta watarudi kwa site na mtaona kazi ambayo inasonga. Kwa hivyo mwisho kabisa ni kumpongeza gavana, senator, women rep na hao wajumbe na MCAs kwa ile amani na utengamano na umoja katika kaunti ya Embu. Hii kaunti ya Embu ni ya maana sana kwa uongozi wa William Ruto na mimi. Hii ni kaunti ambayo ilitupigia kura 100%, na maendeleo hawezi patikana kukiwa na kelele. Kwa hivyo nataka kumpongeza gavana na hao viongozi, muendelee kuongea lugha moja, muongee sauti moja, mupendane, mufanye kazi pamoja, ndio hao watu ya Embu wapate maendeleo. Hata pale Meru kumekuwa na matatizo, imeamuliwa pale kwa Senate. Nilikuwa pale mbele, nimewaita, tukaelewana, kukakuwa amani mwaka moja. Tena wakasosana tena, tukasema wang'ang'ane tuone vile itakuwa. Sasa si imekuwa vile imekuwa, pia nitawaita tena. Hiyo ndio kazi yangu, niite gavana, niite wabunge, niite MCAs, nijaribu kuwarudisha pamoja, kwa sababu Meru County is also very important to administration. Pale katika Kericho ambaye ni backyard yetu pia, governor, deputy walikuwa nasosana, nikawaketisha na MCA, pale iko amani, maendeleo inaendelea. Hapa Kiambu, governor, MCAs, wabunge walikuwa nasosana, nimewaketisha, tumesikizana, tumepata amani. Kwa hivyo mimi nataka viongozi wa Embu, tafadhali msitake nimuite kuunganisha nyinyi, mkuje mambo ya maendeleo peke yake. Nyinyi wenyewe mjipange, mkuwe na amani, ndio mkija kwangu tutumie nafasi hiyo kusukuma barabara, kusukuma maji, kusukuma mambo ya maendeleo. Si mngetaka namna hiyo? Kwa hivyo sisi tumeshukuru sana adwa Embu nitwakena muno na nituli ukarigi myumuri adwa itu nitumwendete muno na tuoka kumunyitirira. Nafikiri father, ukitukubalia tutoe mchango wetu, ndio tuwache nyinyi mkiendelea, ndio na sisi tuende tushikilie huyu mkurino. Naona hata anashindwa kukaa huyu, alaika rowa tarahota kija kuikarira gite wega ni na mathaa mathire, ndio toega tukamunyitirire. Kwa hivyo mtatukubalia sisi tutoe mchango wetu, alafu kutoka hapo twende pande ya Runyenjes pia tufanye kazi hapo. Hata hapa Bere North and South tutapanga waheshimiwa pia tutembelee watu wetu wa Bere. Saa ile governor alikuwa anataja ile kazi yote tumepeana hapa katika Embu County, alisahau pia Antony General Justin Beden Muturi ni mtoto wenu hapa katika Embu, na hii serikali ni yenu. Hata hiyo mumeomba ya balozi tutapanga na rais, ndio musikie muko ndani kabisa. Hata hii ya Muchiri ilikuwa kidogo, tunangangana pale, wewe tulia tu kidogo, unajua kizuri haipatikani rahisi. Kwa hivyo hiyo mambo maneno inaendelea. Kwa hivyo father, tumeshukuru sana na nitwake na muno atimia CWA agulia CMA tuokane genda tumunyitirire na nituli ukarigi. Mimi nimekuja rais, mimi mwenyewe nimeletea nyinyi shilingi milioni 1. Kiongozi wetu bunge
the world. Intellectual sovereignty has to be forged through research and development that is steeped in African experiences, African problems, and African questions. The economics of the African Academy have been part of the modalities of the broad draining of our resources. Because of lack of dedicated funding, many thinkers in the continent are taken in the general brain drain driven by Euro-American institutions. As we have seen over the decades, there is no way Euro-American is going to fund an intellectual project that will see Africa truly become intellectually sovereign. A truly sovereign Africa is a threat to the imperialist establishment that continue to determine the agenda and control of our resources. It is also inspiring to see that our esteemed Prof. Lumumba and those who are joining him in this initiative have chosen our continent and Kenya in particular to establish an intellectual research and knowledge institution. Accordingly, our first duty is to call on sons and daughters of the continent, both based here and in the diaspora, to jealously fund this institute and ensure that it create and charts a unique Africa based on an original thought, because we have a duty to chart our own intellectual path. We are also inspired by the fact that the Institute concept of Pan-Africanism include all people of African descent. That is, those in the continent, the Americas, Caribbean islands, Europe, and Asia. This is because wherever they are found, people who look like you and me continue to be treated as an inferior race. When you see a black person, when you see an African person, everywhere else in the continent, in the diaspora, and all over the world, please be kind to African people, for because they are a hated nation. Wherever they are being enslaved, they are being tortured, they are being harassed. No one shows them love. But you, as an African who claim to be a Pan-Africanist, you have a responsibility to show fellow Africans love and care. The violent, genocidal, and catastrophic transatlantic slave trade and colonialism are the historical twin towers that plugged the humanity of Africans into the dark night, which to this day seem to have no end in sight. The image of the African as a black and subhuman was forged through massive and violent enslavement of millions of African people sold in the Americas as properties of white colonial settlers. In the coastal and mainland villages of West Africa, through the gun, the dogs, and the spears, African communities were plundered, captured against their will, and chained like animals. At the ports of Ghana, those chained, naked, and malnourished bodies of men, women, and children were scaled, measured, and sold for gold, silver, or livestock. They were put in those gigantic ships that crossed thousands of kilometers of the massive body of violent and cold waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Millions will not survive the dangerous voyages on sea. They will die of disease, starvation, or pure mental illness. Many will be offloaded alive, thrown into the deep waters to ease navigation during the storms of the violent seas. It is on those cold Atlantic Ocean's waters, deep in the bottom of the ocean, that many carcasses of African people, their bones lay rotten in chains and swallowed by the sea. Those who survived and on arrival in the Americas were forced to work in the different plantations of white men. From the voyage ships to the plantation, the image of an inferior African was being constructed through brutal force. Then began the violent colonial conquest for settlement aimed at our natural resources that defined our native continent. The white man sought to rule Africa and here designed a system of racial segregation, racial humiliation, racial abuse that lasted for many centuries. The colony and the plantation, with the voyage slave ships in the middle, were the perfect technologies of recreating the African into a subservient being whose only survival in the modern world must always be through white tutelage, supervision, and approval. The transatlantic slave trade, colonial conquest, and colonial rule are responsible for the zombification of the African soul and its intellectual damnification and the psychotic condition where Africa and its people cannot handle their affairs without white supervision. As both an intellectual project and a program of revolutionary change, Pan-Africanism is first the recognition of this terrible history, which by all definition remains a world history that has cast the African into a global identity of inferiority amongst people of the world. Pan-Africanism is never forgotten noise of the painful cries of those captured slaves whose black bodies were swallowed by the Atlantic Ocean from the slave ships. It is the agonizing cry from the brutal violence suffered by the black slaves in the sugar, cotton, and corn plantations from Georgia to Sao Paulo. Pan-Africanism is also the resounding victory from the theater of the Haitian Revolution from 1781 to 1804, led by the greatest descendant of our continent, Toussaint Louverture. Together with his patrons, they bravely led the first and only successful slave revolution in human history, defeating a combined European force commanded by a France Napoleon Bonaparte. It is the bravery of those African former slaves who will define citizenship on a racial definition of blackness, declaring that Haiti belongs to black people regardless of the color of their skin. Pan-Africanism is also the anger emanating from the countless defeats suffered by the patrons, the brave soldiers like those of Mau Mau and Bambata rebellion, defeated at the hands of the brutal British colonial forces. It is the intellectual heritage of Marcus Garvey, W.E. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Harriet Tubman, Pixley Isaac Aseme, Charlotte Mateke, Winnie Mandela, Kwame Nkrumah, Seiko Tore, Julius Nyerere, Haile Selassie, C.L.R.A. James, Frantz Fanon, Thomas Sankara, and today our own Prof. Lumumba, together with us, must carry the mantle of the African Pan-Africanist call. Pan-Africanism is a set of ideas written in chains with blood, spear, and the unforgiving guns of the sons and daughters from the Algerian Revolution to the Battle of Kutoko-Naval. It is the one-party state of Africa as a whole, as professed by Marcus Garvey. It is Ami Caesarius' negritude, Kwame Nkrumah's African socialism, Steve Biko's black consciousness, Julius Nyerere, Ujamaa. It is also Mbeki's African Renaissance, all based on forging a unity of African people who are formed by the same history and must seek after common destiny. It is the architectural achievement from the pyramid of Egypt to the cities of Mapungubwe. It is the industrial invasion by Garrett Morgan, traffic lights, Frederick Jones, refrigerated trucks, and Alexandra Mars, automatic elevator doors. It is the cultural movement in jazz, R&B, reggae, funk, blues, kwaito, juju Nigeria, Chimorenga Zimbabwe, Makossa Cameroon, and Benga Kenya. It is the novel Things Fall Apart, The Devil on the Cross, Maru, The Trails of Brother Jeru, Songs of Solomon, and Notes of Native Son. It is the artwork of Gerald Sekoto, Chike Anyako, Oche Okeke, Edmonia Lewis, the religious movement of Bishop Lekhanyane, Manku, and Shembe, the Coptics of Egypt and the Ethiopian Orthodox Christians, as well as Islamic denominations from Tunisia, Nigeria, Kenya, all deserve a place in the rich thinking and knowledge about Africa and its people. It is true that Pan-African call has also been prophetic, carrying important cautions that those who conducted the project for the rebirth of the African continent in the post-colonial context have not heeded to. In the pages of Frantz Fanon, Richard of the Earth, lays a critique which, since independent in the 1950s to this day, leaders of African people have failed to give programmatic response to this call. First and foremost, the Pan-African call is a call for African unity, not cooperation, collaboration, or coexistence. Many of you confuse the unity of Africa to mean collaboration or cooperation. We don't want to cooperate, we don't want to collaborate, we want to be one, and being one means we must share the same vision and the same direction. Yet many over the past half a century have chosen cooperation which has given way to neo-colonialism. That is to say, for African leaders to continue colonialism without direct rule by colonialists. The launch of the Pan-African Institute right here in Kenya must help us intellectually to shift towards revolutionary Pan-Africanism, contribute to resolving some of the historical mistakes, blunders committed by post-liberation movements. We should state clear here that while the formation of the Organization of African Unity was a step in the right direction, the fact that the founding conference failed to unite the African continent is a historical blunder. President Kwame Nkrumah, Seko Tore, and Emperor Haile Selassie prophetically said that the failure to unite the African continent will give rise to the neo-colonialism and that African continent will perish. The revolutionary Pan-Africanist ideological and political diagnosis of the future was correct. The future is here. 50 years later, we know that we remain visitors in our own continent. We know that our resources benefit Euro-American than our own people. This is despite most African countries gaining independence from colonial rule since 1957. Massive, huge tracts of land, our mineral resources, our animals, our oceans are still owned and controlled by the colonial masters. There are no countries in the entire African continent that have gained full economic emancipation and independence. And this includes Ghana, which was the first to lead the road. Till to date, it can't claim that Africans in Ghana own the means of production. In 2016 report titled The New Colonialism reveals that there are 101 British companies listed on the London Stock Exchange that control an identified 1.5 trillion US dollars worth of resources in Africa in just 5 commodities: oil, gold, diamond, coal, and platinum. This is a very conservative figure since it includes resources listed by only some companies. Many companies do not provide the figures of the resources they control. And majority of these companies that do not tell us what they control and what they own in Africa are found in DRC, because they are the ones who fuel the divisions in DRC. They are the ones who fuel the fight in DRC, and they are stealing the resources of DRC because they know there is no proper accountability for such resources. The War on Want report on neo-colonialism further illustrates that The fact that these 101 companies control and own the following key resources on our continent: 6.6 billion barrels of oil, currently worth 276 billion US dollars. They control 79.5 million ounces of gold, worth 119 billion US dollars. They control 699.3 million carats of diamonds, worth 134 billion of US dollars. 3.6 billion tons of coal, worth 216 billion US dollars. 287 million ounces of platinum, worth 305 billion US dollars. These are the numbers that reflect British neo-colonialism in the African continent. I've not spoken about what French companies are doing. The Portuguese continue to play a significant role in the economy of Mozambique and Angola. The French continue to micromanage all the countries that were their colonies, except the recent liberated zones of Mali and Burkina Faso. Comrades, the French are brutal, to a point that post-colonialism, they still make certain African countries to pay colonial tax to France. The French are brutal because some of their former colonies, their reserve banks are still in France. They are not in control of their own economy, yet they claim to have an independence. We, as progressive Pan-Africanists, must fully associate with and support all revolutionary actions of fighters who are removing puppets of French imperialism from political office and power. Not all these actions are revolutionary, because we must be careful of French-sponsored coups in Africa, where we think there is a revolution taking place in Guinea-Conakry, only to find that there is a French puppet who seeks to replace those who were there before. There is nothing revolutionary about the Guinea-Conakry coup. We ought to separate that there can never be a revolutionary coup that reinforces French imperialism on African soil. Anyone who comes into political office under the pretext that they are fighting a French puppet, while knowing they are the French puppet themselves, must be isolated by progressive Pan-Africanists. All French soldiers and military must leave the African continent, and this also should apply to neo-colonial military bases, including the African Command Center of the USA. We don't want the army of America. We don't want the army of France here. We don't want the army of anyone. We want African army on African soil. The Pan-Africanist Institute should therefore provide ideological, political, and technical weapons to all progressive forces of the African continent to fight against colonialism. There is a political trend that is being accepted by African heads of state and government, where one country convenes all 54 heads of African states and government. The United States of America, France, China, Russia, and United Kingdom convene all 54 heads of states and government for a meeting, and they all go following each other like Casey and Jojo as heads of states to listen to one head of state, 51 of them. Sometimes they disrespect them to a point where they put all 54 heads of states of Africa in a school bus to go and listen to one head of state. What happened to these men? Because all of them, majority of them are men. What happened to these fathers who go and bow combined to one man? Even if he's Putin, why would they all follow each other and go and listen to one person? What happened to their dignity and their authority as leadership? They must have leadership qualities to know that Putin is equal to them, that China is equal to their own single country, irrespective of their size, because what matters is sovereignty. And if China recognizes that sovereignty, will respect the president of that sovereign country as an individual. Comrade, Kwame Nkrumah noticed this when he said that neocolonialism also means the following: breaking up former large united colonial territories into a number of small non-viable states incapable of independent development. An external directed economic system and political policy, the state being obligated to take the manufactured products of the imperialist power to the exclusion of competing products from elsewhere. Payments towards the cost of running the state to ensure control over government policies, and foreign capital is used for the exploitation rather than the development of less developed regions. Governor, on my way here, we saw how the people here are working the land. We saw that there is no piece of land here that is not being utilized to the benefit of our people. But the question remains, where do these people sell these things? Because they can't consume all of them. Yes, they must produce to feed themselves and feed the whole Kenya and feed the continent and the world. Is the government buying food that is produced fresh from this soil, or do we have companies that are owned by white people in Nairobi who bring finished products into the land that has got products that can be bought directly from our own people? We say people must work the land. After they work the land, their own governments in Africa do not procure from those people. Because if it does not have a white color, they don't like it. Our leaders like their colonizers more than us. That's why they always seek after anything that looks like colonizers. 10 years ago, we as revolutionary activists and visionaries from south of African continent started a revolutionary socialist movement and Pan-Africanist movement, the EFF, Economic Freedom Fighters. When we formed the EFF in South Africa, we told them that our organization is not for South Africa. Our organization is for all Africans. And we said this. We said this during xenophobic attacks of our people in South Africa, where people were being attacked because they come from outside South Africa. We chose to side with our people because we're necessitated by the fact that we love ourselves. And if you love yourself, you'll see a person from Tanzania in you. You'll see a person from Nigeria in you, because we are one thing. We as the economic emancipation movement did not only say we are Pan-Africanist. In one of our cardinal pillars, we said South Africa must engage in massive investment of economic development in Africa. Because if you keep on saying people are coming to South Africa, are looking for jobs, are going to take jobs from us, we can stop this thing of people coming to South Africa. How do you do it? Go and build massive economic development in African countries so that people can stay where they are and they can feed themselves from where they are. No one wants to leave his own home into some strange place. We leave our homes because we are searching for greener pastures. If there is an ESCOM in South Africa which is failing to give us electricity, but when it was well and still running according to how we wanted it, ESCOM had the capacity to electrify the whole of Africa. Why are you not going into the African continent and electrify the whole of Africa? Why is there no train that moves from Cape to Cairo, making sure that trade in Africa and movement of goods and persons is easy? Because if we do that, there's no one who can leave Lusaka to go and stay in South Africa. they can get into a train, go and do what they want to do in South Africa, and come back home and develop their own countries. We must make sure that this Africa is linked together. We must violently demolish the borders that exist between our countries, because those are not our borders. You cannot worship a border between Tanzania and Kenya and come and sit in this hall and say you are a Pan-Africanist. A Pan-Africanist means the first task is to get rid of colonial borders so that we bring Africa together in practical terms. I don't know if President William Ruto means it, because he said so many things and I can't locate him these days, because the things he said during election and the things he's doing now are two different things. I don't know. Because I heard him saying we need to do away with the dollar and build our own currency, but his actions are not speaking to anything of doing away with the dollar. The latest being putting a red carpet for a murderer, a person who killed the Kenyan people, coming into this country, receiving a red carpet and being saluted by our own army. This is not a Kenyan army, it's not a colonialist army. The Kenyan army is a product of the Mau Mau rebellion, and those who killed our people in the Mau Mau rebellion cannot be saluted by the same army of the children of those who were killed during Mau Mau rebellion. We have a duty to stay true to the cause. We have a duty to remind the King and Britain of what they did to us. Indeed, he shows no remorse. He says this was bad, it shouldn't have happened. But he runs short of, I apologize, I am sorry. He will never say he is sorry, for because he thinks that his race makes him superior and he's not qualified to apologize to those who are junior to him. We call upon the Kenyan government to be firm and to decide what they want to be. Do they want to be Pan-Africanist, or do they want to be proponents of neo-colonialism? You can't have it both. Only one call must be made, and that call is of Pan-Africanism. It's not easy being a Pan-Africanist, for because the mindset of our people is so colonized, they are going to isolate you. They are going to look at you as if you are a mad person. They are going to look at you as if you are unreasonable. But it is a cause worth pursuing because of the generation that came before us. We don't want visas. We want one currency for Africa, because our currency can be more powerful than the pound and the dollar combined, because London has got the biggest storage of gold, yet they don't have a single smallest mine of gold. Their economy is based on our minerals, and if we safeguard our minerals and protect them and say out of these minerals we are producing a currency that is going to compete internationally, we stand a good chance. We need African Central Bank. We need African Monetary Zone. We need African military combat, because these pockets of wars that are happening in Africa are not of our own making. They are sponsored wars so that those who continue to steal our resources can do so uninterrupted as we fight ourselves, amongst ourselves. So we need a military, a common defense system, the African High Command that will ensure the stability and security of Africa. We equally need a binding African court to deal with dictators who only exist in Africa to feed their friends and families. Those people must be prosecuted the African way, because ISIS is not meant to fight any crime, it's meant to pursue political fights. That's why ISIS will not declare a warrant of arrest against Netanyahu, but can declare a warrant of arrest against Putin, who has not bombed a hospital, who has not bombed a refugee camp, who has not declared a war on a certain ethnic group. We as Revolutionary Economic Emancipation Movement also associate with what Guinea's president Sekou Touré said in 1963. He said, above all, we must avoid the pitfalls of tribalism. There is tribalism taking place in DRC. All our leaders have taken a platform to support or to be against this one or that one. They've spoken on Palestine. They've spoken on the war between Russia and Ukraine. But I'm still to hear the stand of President William Ruto about the ongoing war that is not covered by anyone in DRC, where people are fighting over territorial expansion and plunder of resources, and blacks are killing other blacks. It's important as leaders of states and governments to always condemn violence and war, especially if it's barbaric and informed by tribalism and unjustifiable territorial expansions. Before you can speak about other countries, charity begins at home. Let there be peace in DRC. Without peace in DRC, Kenya will never know peace. Because these rascals are going to learn from those wars in DRC and want to import them into Kenya. You have a duty to stop them there before they come into Kenya. Comrades, we will make sure the struggle of all immigrants, most of whom are economic migrants and asylum seekers in South Africa. We will never. In South Africa, they say to us, if you want to be elected, you must declare war on illegal immigrants. And illegal immigrants, they mean Africans. We have refused as the EFF that we will never declare war on any immigrant, illegal or legal. Illegal according to whose law? Because if you are illegal, you should have violated a certain law. Which African law did these people violate when they came to this side of Africa? Because they are still in the same territory of Africa. They are at home when they are in South Africa. We wish to tell them we're going to elections next year in South Africa. We wish to reiterate that, and we tell them all the time, if they want to elect us on the basis of xenophobia, they can keep their votes. We are not disparate for votes. We are disparate for the unity of Africa, and that's what we want to achieve in our lifetime. Remove the visas as an immediate step, and I hear Kenya is going to do that by December. Perhaps I must come back here in December unannounced, so to test if indeed President William Ruto means exactly what he said when he said there won't be visas in December. Maybe I must sneak in and test without applying for any visa and just give them the South African passport and say I'm coming home. Mama, we want to commit in front of you and all the dignitaries who are here and the students, that this Pan-African Institute will be supported by the EFF, will ensure that indeed it has got a home in South Africa. We will not only support it verbally, we will put money into it, we will pay the staff members of the institute, we will also pay the offices of the institute, because we believe that we must speak one language as Africa. We will donate the books here at the university to ensure that every African writer has got his. Let's all spread the gospel. Indeed, it was not a mistake to launch it here in the rural areas, because no one must be left behind. If you can carry on your back the rural communities, you have no any other option to go anywhere except to go to the urban. But if you start from rural, there is no way you can cover the urban. But if you start from the urban, you are going to be reluctant to come to the rural. We are starting here to liberate our people in the rural areas, and we're going to the urban to ensure that everybody hears the message. Tell President Ruto that the people of Palestine are what Mau Mau was. Tell President Ruto that the people of South Africa are what Palestinian people are today. Where our land get encroached, where our land just get taken, and we get killed on our own land, we get tortured on our own land, we get imprisoned on our own land. When we fight, they say we are terrorists. This Nelson Mandela you celebrate, for 27 years, he was in prison because he was a terrorist. What crime did he commit, which the Palestinians are not committing? His crime was to fight for the liberation of the people of South Africa and the oppressed world all over, including the people of Palestine. It can't be correct that President Ruto, knowing the history of this country and the history of South Africa, comes and tells us that it's with Israelites. Our war is not on Jewish people. Our war is not on pregnant women, Jewish pregnant women. Our war is not on Jewish children. Our war is against a Zionist apartheid state of Israel, and that's what we are fighting. So if he got money from some Jewish person, we are not fighting that funder of his. We are fighting the state of Israel. We are not fighting individuals. We are fighting the state of Israel. At the age of 9 years, the Boers walked into my house and turned everything upside down, stripped my mother naked. When I see what those children of Palestine are going through, I can immediately relate that this is what apartheid looks like. We cannot be Pan-Africanist if we can't associate with the oppressed nation. Our Pan-Africanism is based on the basis that we are an oppressed nation ourselves. And everywhere else where we see an oppressed person, that person is our sister, that person is our mother, that person is our father, because we are not free until the whole world is free from imperialism and colonialism. I don't know if you'll regret inviting me after this. But my problem is that I tell my truth as is. And I say it to authorities without fear or favor. Till today, no one has ever sued me legally successful. Till today, no one has imprisoned me, because you can't imprison or sue the truth. The truth will always prevail. Comrades, we must make sure that as we live here, our sympathy is with the oppressed people. Look at Cuba. Its crime was to choose a different economic system to what America has chosen. And then they are under more than 60 years of economic embargo. What crime did the people of Western Sahara commit against Morocco? We are at the center of speaking the truth as a Pan-Africanist institute because we've got the ear of the continent and the diaspora and the whole world. And this organization we are launching today, Prof, will live forever and ever because you only speak the truth yourself to power. And you always make us politicians to want to check if indeed we are still on the right track. So an institution established by a person like you, we are guaranteed that it will live for long and it will live for generations to come. That's why we are proud to be here. I was not brought by a plane here. I was not brought by a car here. I was driven by the spirits of those people who were dumped in the oceans. And when they were dumping them in the oceans, their cries are still crying loud till today. They did not dump them in the ocean only. They dumped them chained on their hands and their feet, and they could not fight. When the sharks were eating them in those oceans, they could not fight. Even if you know that today I'm going to die, but it is always good to die fighting. That you must hold the shark even when you know it's going to swallow me. I must die fighting. Those people who died in the ocean said to me, you ought to arrive there. For because what you guys are going to start there is that which is going to seek reparations for us. As you leave this place and going back to your home, beaten, treated like dogs. Remember all of those slaves that asked for help and they never found help. But you must say to them in spirit, the help has arrived. And that help we declare today that will fight the battles of the heroes and heroines of Mau Mau, of Mbambata Rebellion, of the slaves. This Pan-Africanist Institute must be at the center of demanding reparations for all the suffering Africans have gone through because of colonialism. We must teach our people that we are not beggars. When we ask for reparation, we are not asking for donation. We are asking for what was stolen from us to be returned so that we can prosper and become a better nation. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. More than 11,000 people are confirmed died in Libya in what's the worst flood disaster in Africa's recorded history. It's Friday, the 15th of September.
We're inside Derna in the worst affected area in the worst affected town in eastern Libya, where many relatives are still searching for their loved ones.
We're at the site of the dam that collapsed and unleashed a catastrophic flood on the Libyan city of Derna. The United Nations has said that most of the deaths could have been avoided if there'd been an adequate early warning system. Also ahead, the father, stepmother and uncle of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif are charged with her murder. President Biden's son Hunter faces criminal charges over allegations that he lied about his use of drugs while buying a gun. Nearly £1 million for a second-hand jumper. An iconic piece of Diana memorabilia is auctioned at Sotheby's.
In sport, Manchester United winger Jadon Sancho is training alone after a row with his boss Eric Ten Hag. And the hosts France survive a scare to beat Uruguay at the Rugby World Cup.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Libya's Red Crescent says 11,300 people are now known to have died in the coastal city of Derna. The scale of the humanitarian disaster is unprecedented. This is the worst flood disaster in Africa's recorded history. People desperately need help, but they also want answers about why there was no adequate warning system in place. Well, Sky's Alex Crawford and Yusuf El Bagir have reached the city of Derna and joined me now. Alex, to you, first of all, tell us a little bit about what you've seen since you arrived there.
Well, pretty much in the centre of Derna, quite near the port, and everywhere you look here, it's 360 degrees destruction. You can look behind me. Where we're standing is the first floor of a 9-storey block of flats. It's just been levelled. Behind me are many more blocks of flats, all pancaked, smashed out the way. You can just see the foundations left here. The force of the water was so strong from the 2 dams that collapsed, which Yusra will show you in a minute, that it actually sounded like, the locals saying it sounded like explosion after explosion after explosion. Massive tons of rocks, whole apartment blocks just swept away. You can see the foundations of an entire bridge. There are 3 bridges that have just been swept away. Tons of rocks have been lifted up and moved. Part of the bridge has been moved, some 700 meters. The whole of the road has been swept away. There are building after building which has been levelled or smashed through. They had, according to those who survived, about 20 minutes to get out of the way of this torrent of water. You can see again another bridge, just the foundations sticking up out of the way. That is, to the left of the bridge, is the Saba Mosque, one of the most religious sites in eastern Libya, certainly the most significant religious Islamic site here, has been upended. You can't see it anymore, and it's been moved about 50 meters to a completely different location. And we're finding vehicles upended in trees against buildings. The number of people who have died here is still just not known. We've seen clusters of volunteers, relatives basically, who are searching for their loved ones. Just to the right of where we are, they think there are about 14 missing people. A building's already been marked with an orange marking, which shows that they think there are some dead people beneath. Much of the imagination to know that there's so many scars here that don't even look reminiscent of buildings. There are probably, well, dozens, maybe more than that, of people's bodies they haven't yet recovered. And there are still more than 10,000 people missing, Anna.
Well, yes, the scale of this disaster is unimaginable, Alex. Is there any help coming in for these people?
We've been here overnight. We drove through the night to get here. We managed to plot a route, had the help of a local, but remember, most of us are pretty much strangers to this area. The road was clear. We managed to get through. There is no sign of any significant international aid here at all. There is very little evidence of any Libyan aid workers. We've seen some military activity, some soldiers, like I would say a handful so far, which we saw going through, a couple of soldiers just going through buildings. Most of the people we've seen are civilians, and they are in shock, staring, or they're wandering around and they've targeted a particular building where they know relatives or friends lived, and they're armed with pickaxes and shovels to try to find evidence of what happened to their relatives of loved one. And you'll notice we've noticed that a lot of them are wearing masks because there's quite a strong smell in the air of corpses. And a lot of people here feel that this was a disaster that started as a natural disaster with Storm Daniel, but they had plenty of warning about Storm Daniel. We saw it cutting its way through a number of Mediterranean countries before it hit here in eastern Libya. And then on top of that, there was a catastrophic culmination of human error, where they had preparation, they could have warned, they could have got people out of this city, out of the way, and instead they didn't. That was the first error. The second one was 2 dams collapsed, and that happened because they hadn't been looked after for many years. But my colleague Yusra will tell you more about that later on in the programme.
Well, yes, and just before we do go to Yusra, who can describe the scene near where that dam was breached, give us an idea of what people are saying to you there. The scale of their need is enormous.
I mean, seriously, these are people who are doing it very much on their own. You can see little patches of groups of people wandering around. This is a city. I mean, it's hard to imagine. People were living here, working just a week ago, enjoying life. It looks like someone's just picked up the middle of the city and just smashed it on the ground. Every building around that I can see has been affected in some way. And just imagine, in every one of these buildings you see collapsed, there were hundreds of people living and thriving and working. So where are they, apart from those who have died, and there are clearly thousands, what about those who have somehow survived? Where are they now living? Where have they gone? They're utterly displaced, and there must be a huge number of them, and a lot of the responsibility is being placed on the terribly poor infrastructure, the poor governance, the corruption, the splitting of the country into 2 militia-supported authorities. One is supported by the UN, and decades of problems which lead back to the 2011 NATO-backed invasion of Libya and the ousting of Colonel Gaddafi, which has had a knock-on effect on this country and reduced it to a basket case.
Alex, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's turn then to our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bagir, who joins me now by one of the dams which burst near Derna. And Yusra, tell us a little bit about what you can see there.
I mean, this dam is now known by residents as the Dam of Death, said Del Mot. And what we've seen as we've been here is people just come and look in awe, just shocked at the scale of the tragedy that this dam unleashed on them just in a matter of moments. Now, just behind me, you can see the structures completely collapsed. You can see the remnants of some sort of dam structure. You can see a riverbed with a stream in it, and just thinking, when you look at the cliff edge, what the maximum capacity of this valley is, just how much water must have come through to destroy this dam. And this wasn't the first dam that was completely destroyed by the floods. It was the second dam. There's one further upstream. Now, these 2 dams usually hold back rainwater that comes during a very short period of the year here in Derna, and they keep it they regulate the water flow to the coast. And just in a matter of moments, again, residents say they heard a loud explosion after just 1 day of rain from Cyclone Daniel, and a street even cutting through. Now, the people here have lived by the coast for generations, many of them, and to just think of what their relationship with water now is, as this flood has just completely changed their lives. Even before we got here, one Libyan who has family here told us that this isn't a natural disaster, this is a catastrophe. And when we got here, he collapsed into tears just looking at his father's hometown and seeing what had become of it.
Well, yes, and over 11,000 now confirmed to have died, Yusra, but the thought is that number will still go much higher.
We've seen it climb in just hours. Just in Derna alone, it's 5,500 people at least killed, and the search is still on for the over 10,000 people that are missing. And again, residents here are just in a complete state of shock. This wasn't something that they were really aware of. It's not something that they were warned about adequately, even though there were enough meteorological warnings. And we had seen what had happened in Greece, as Alex said. We understood that the National Meteorological Survey did warn the government of what could happen here, you know, the warning of floods. But nonetheless, people just had to watch and see their city torn apart.
Yusra El-Bagir there in Derna. Thanks very much indeed. Now, the father, stepmother and uncle of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif have been charged with her murder. Her body was found at her home in Woking last month. Well, let's get a little bit more on this with our correspondent Rachel Venables, who's here with me. So get us up to date with the latest then.
Now, since the body of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif was discovered in the empty family home in Woking in Surrey, and now we know after a press release from Surrey Police that was issued just after midnight tonight that the Crown Prosecution Service have authorised charges against 3 people, 3 family members. Her father, Irfan Sharif, who's 41, his partner, Benash Batul, who's 29, and his brother, so Sarah's uncle, Faisal Malik, who's 28. All of them of Hammond Road in Woking. They've tried with her murder as well as with causing or allowing the death of a child. Now, the trio were arrested moments after getting off a plane from Dubai at Gatwick Airport on Wednesday evening. We know that they'd travelled out to Pakistan along with 5 of Sarah's siblings the day before her body was found by police, which was in the early hours of the 10th of August. A post-mortem examination later found that the youngster had suffered multiple and extensive injuries that had occurred over a sustained and extended period of time. Last week, also footage that was sent to broadcasters, including Sky News, showed Ms Batul sitting next to Mr Sharif, speaking publicly for the first time since Sarah's death. She described what had happened as an incident, and she said they were willing to cooperate with the UK authorities and to fight their case in court. Well, the trio have been remanded in custody and they're due at court later on today. Guildford magistrates, that'll be their first appearance since being charged overnight.
Rachel, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Let's take a look now at some of the day's other headlines. And more than 40 flights have been cancelled or diverted because of a lack of staff in air traffic control at Gatwick Airport. The airport apologised for any inconvenience caused and urged passengers to contact their airline for more information. The consumer watchdog Which says that supermarket loyalty schemes are often not as good as they appear to be. Which says that Sainsbury's and Tesco's are inflating the regular price of some items so that promotions look better. Well, both supermarkets said that Which's analysis failed to take inflation into account and insisted they adhere to trading standards rules. Around 13,000 American auto workers have gone on strike. Members of the United Auto Workers Union walked out from a General Motors assembly plant in Missouri, a Ford factory in Michigan, and a Stellantis Jeep plant in Ohio. Conservative MP Theo Clark is calling for more to be done to protect women from birth trauma after a recent poll revealed that traumatic prevented a significant proportion of women from having more children. The MP Stafford has previously spoken about her own birth story, saying she thought she was going to die before emergency surgery. Now, President Biden's son Hunter faces criminal charges over allegations that he lied about his use of drugs while buying a gun. The 53-year-old is the first child of a sitting US president ever to be prosecuted. Our US correspondent Mark Stone has the details.
Well, new twists and turns in America's political rollercoaster every day now, it seems. Donald Trump, of course, has his 4 indictments, 4 court cases, and yet polling numbers that keep going up. And now, while not remotely comparable in legal terms or awkward news nonetheless for President Biden. As you say, it involves his son Hunter and this 4-page indictment against him. The charges are not new. The decision to indict, well, that is. It's all about a handgun Hunter bought in 2018. It's alleged that he lied on a form claiming that he wasn't a drug addict when it is known that he was. That is a federal offence. He thought he'd secured a plea deal back in July in which those charges would be dropped if he accepted others for tax evasion. That fell apart, and this indictment has now been issued. A trial could commence as his father seeks re-election, and that is messy to say the least. It's certainly been quite the week for President Biden. Just 2 days ago, Republicans on Capitol Hill launched an impeachment inquiry against him. They allege, without evidence so far, corruption and dodgy dealings, again involving Hunter. To be clear, there is no equivalence between Trump's legal ramblings and Biden's, but here, does that matter? People see what they want to see. Two presumptive candidates for president, for now at least, both have their own particular challenges. And who knows what the next few weeks will bring. There is a growing sense here in Washington among Democrats that their own aging Joe Biden is maybe not their best candidate.
Let me just bring you a little bit of breaking news. And the Ministry of Defence has just published its latest intelligence update on the situation in Ukraine. And the is confirming that Ukraine's missile strikes on Russia's navy in Crimea this week hit one of 4 cruise missile-capable submarines in the Black Sea Fleet and a land ship. The attack likely inflicted, they say, catastrophic damage to the Rostov-na-Doну submarine, while the Minsk landing ship has almost certainly been functionally destroyed. That's according to the Ministry of Defence in their latest assessment of the situation in Ukraine. I'm joined now by the Policing Minister, Chris Philp, who's just come in. Good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
I want to ask you about policing, because yesterday there were a couple of bits of news concerning the Met Police. The first, that 3 Met Police officers are facing allegations of gross misconduct after the strip search of a 15-year-old schoolgirl. We also saw the Met Police paying out compensation and apologising to 2 women who were arrested at the vigil for Sarah Everard, who was, of course, the young woman who was killed by a serving Met Police officer. Are you shocked by the police's behaviour in these instances?
Well, I think behaviour like that you've just described, the incident was Child Q, of course, is unacceptable. We can't have people being treated in the way that Child Q was. It's critical that where there are officers serving, in the Met or anywhere else, whose conduct doesn't come up to the required standard, it's right that that gets looked at properly and, if appropriate, they get removed. The government changed the rules, just sitting on the sofa probably about 2 weeks ago, explaining how we're changing the rules to make it easier and faster for chief constables and chief officers to dismiss officers who shouldn't be wearing the badge, carrying the badge or wearing the uniform. It's worth bearing in mind, or keeping in mind, of course, that the vast majority of police officers are brave and dedicated and hard-working. But for that small minority who let the side down, significant, and let the public down, more importantly, action does need to be taken. And that's why we're giving chief constables these stronger powers. The Met Commissioner is taking very strong action to sort out the historic misconduct issues in the Met, and I've got confidence in the programme of work that he's carrying out.
One of the 2 women who was arrested at the Sarah Everard vigil, who's been apologised to and given a payout to, has called for the Met Police to be abolished.
Well, I don't agree with that. I think I'm a London MP. I think it's important that we keep Londoners safe, and that is the Metropolitan Police's job. I've got confidence in Mark Rowley's turnaround. I was at a meeting yesterday with him and the Mayor of London. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, of course, is responsible for overseeing Met politically. I think the turnaround plan is so far making progress, and I don't think disbanding the Met would help Londoners.
OK, let's move on to other issues, because there are reports today that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are considering scaling back HS2. Is the government committed to extending HS2 to Manchester? Well, we're working on building HS2 at the moment. There are spades in the ground, there's track being laid, tunnels are being tunnelled underneath various bits of the track on the route. That work is underway. The government does from time to time consider the phasing of projects, but that's just a general comment. I don't know anything about the specifics of this. I'm a Home Office Minister, so I'm afraid I don't know about exactly what is or is not being considered, but I do know that work is ongoing
going as we run.
But you're here to represent the government. You can't say that the government is committed to extending the line to Manchester as planned.
Well, I can tell you that work on the line is ongoing at the moment. It is being built, and those trains are going to go very fast, from London going north, as soon as the line is finished.
You can see that there's a possibility that it won't go to Manchester.
Well, they look at phasing occasionally, but I don't know, to be honest. As a Home Office Minister, I don't know exactly what they're looking at. You need to talk to the Treasury or the Department for Transport. What I do know is that work on constructing HS2 is going on at the moment.
The Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, has tweeted about this. He doesn't seem terribly happy. One of the things he said is that the southern half of England gets a modern railway system and the north is left with Victorian infrastructure. He asks in colourful language, what's happened to levelling up?
Well, I mean, there's billions of pounds. I think it's £3 billion this year being invested in levelling up in the north. There are new rail projects, more local rail projects being invested in the north, road infrastructure. The government is, moving departments up into the north, so moving civil servants, government departments. So the levelling up agenda is steaming ahead. As I say, £3 billion of capital investment going into helping the north.
OK, well, so many issues to talk about today. I'm going to move on to something else, because Rishi Sunak stood in front of a sign saying stop the boats earlier this year, and yet we've had 23,000 crossings so far. The backlog in the meantime is at record levels, and the Rwanda policy potentially may never happen. So what would you give the chances of Rishi Sunak meeting that target of stopping the boats? Well,
let's start with the small boats. So the number this year compared to last year, the same time last year, is around about % down. Now, we'd like to go a lot further, obviously, but it's a good start that we've got those numbers down by 20% year on year, at a time when in Europe, the numbers are going up. In Europe, the illegal arrivals, illegal immigration into Europe is up by 20%. Here in the UK, we've got it, up by 30% in Europe. Here in the UK, we've got it down by 20. So that is a good start. Not by no means the job is complete, but it's a good start at least.
Will he meet his pledge? And
well, I'm confident in the fullness of time. Yes, we will stop those boats. We must stop those boats. They're illegal crossings of the Channel. They're dangerous. They're also unnecessary because France is a safe country. It's not a war zone. By contrast, we see Labour proposing this open door policy, doing a deal with the European Union that would see 100,000 of Europe's illegal immigrants being shipped over to the UK, and I don't think bringing over 100,000 or more of Europe's illegal immigrants over here is what the British public want to see. We don't want Keir Starmer's open door policy.
They say that number is nonsense, and they say the fact the government is putting that number out is embarrassing. They're talking about a tailor-made deal, and isn't a deal, a returns deal, exactly what Rishi Sunak was seeking with the EU? Just last month, Downing Street said the Prime Minister remained open to taking forward negotiations on an UK-EU returns deal, but the EU rebuffed him.
Not with quotas in the way that Keir Starmer is proposing. And if you look at the... hang on.
We don't know the details of what he's proposing.
If you look at the returns agreements we have got, with Albania, for example, about a year ago, we entered into a returns agreement with Albania. So when people from Albania cross the Channel, they can be returned quickly back to their home country. And as a result of doing that, it has reduced Albanian arrivals by 90% in the last year. When Australia did something similar about 8-9 years ago, Operation Sovereign Borders, it cut their illegal arrivals by sea down to 0. We've got to deal with Rwanda. We're hopeful, I'm expecting that will get approved by the Supreme Court, and that will provide a huge deterrent effect, because why would you cross the Channel if you're going to end up going to Rwanda? We've seen the deterrent effect working with the Albania deal. We've seen it work in Australia 8 or 9 years ago. And yet, Keir Starmer proposes to scrap the Rwanda deal, even though we can see that it's going to work.
Well, we don't know yet whether it will work or not, and
whether or not it will go ahead. I've given you two compelling case studies.
Let me just put one other point to you, because Labour is also promising to end the use of hotels for asylum seekers if they got into power, and help clear the backlog of cases. Labour has a point, doesn't it, that it would save a lot of money if we actually process these people rather than keeping in this accommodation.
Well, where are they going to put the 100,000 people they intend to ship over from Europe under their plan that Keir Starmer announced? I mean, that's going to make the hotel problem worse, not better.
People,
well, if you look at the way the proposed European asylum scheme works, the UK's share of that would be about 13%. And last year they had around about 1 million asylum applications in Europe. So you can see where the 100,000 comes from. It's pretty clear. And where would, if Labour did bring across 100,000 people from Europe, where would they go? They'd end up in hotels. Look, the way to end the use of hotels is to stop the boats. We're down 20%. We need to go further. The Rwanda deal will help stop the boats. And on the asylum backlog, the Immigration Minister has doubled the number of decision makers and the Home Secretary, double the number of decision makers. It's up to about 2,500 now. That's double compared to last year. And we're on track by December of this year to get the legacy cases, the cases that date back from June last year or before, down to zero. So, I mean, more work to do, but there is good progress being made.
OK, Chris Phil, we appreciate your time. Thanks very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.
Let's take a look at what the weather's up to now.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, today will bring rain to some, but over the weekend it will become more widely unsettled with some increasing heat and humidity. It's mainly fine across southern Britain, northwest Ireland and northern Scotland, but most other places have some rain. Much of Ireland, Northern Ireland and southern Scotland will stay dull and wet through the morning, with localised flooding possible. The far north of England will have rain too, while northern Scotland will see just a few showers and there'll be some strong winds over Shetland.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now, Princess Diana's black sheep jumper has sold for nearly £1 million at Sotheby's auction in New York. The red jumper, famously worn by Diana at a polo match in June 1981, shortly after her engagement, far exceeded its estimated value of between £40,000 and £70,000. It was discovered in an attic in March by the designer Joanna Osborne. The sweater is amongst the initial designs by Osborne and Sally Muir for Warm and Wonderful knitwear, founded in 1979. Well, the winning bidder's identity remains undisclosed. Intriguing. Coming up on Sky News Breakfast, don't go anywhere, we're going to head to Morocco to hear from a resident in the Atlas Mountains as the country struggles in the aftermath of last week's earthquake that's known to have killed almost 3,000 people. Also ahead, some good news for the butterfly population, but a warning from conservationists. Hello, welcome back. Our top stories this morning. Over 11,000 people are believed to have died in Libya in the worst flood in recorded African history. Father, uncle and stepmother of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif have been charged with her murder. And Hunter Biden, the son of US President Joe Biden, has been indicted on 3 federal firearms-related charges. Let's go back now to our top story, the catastrophic floods in Libya. Well, our special correspondent Alex Crawford's in the city of Derna at the heart of the devastation.
Behind me are many more blocks of flats, all pancaked, smashed out the way. You can just see the foundations left here. The force of the water was so strong from the 2 dams that collapsed, which will show you in a minute. It actually sounded like, the locals saying it sounded like explosion after explosion after explosion. Massive tons of rocks, whole apartment blocks just swept away. You can see the foundations of an entire bridge. There are 3 bridges that have just been swept away. Tons of rocks have been lifted up and moved. Part of the bridge has been moved, some 700 meters. The whole of the road has been swept away. There are building after building which has been leveled or smashed through. They had, according to those who survived, about 20 minutes to get out of the way of this torrent of water. You can see again another bridge, just the foundations sticking up out of the way. That is, to the left of the bridge, is the Saba Mosque, one of the most religious sites in eastern Libya, certainly the most significant religious Islamic site here in Derna. The whole of the front has been upended. You can't see it anymore, and it's been moved about 50 meters to a completely different location. And we're finding vehicles upended in trees against buildings. The number of people who have died here is still just not known.
And we'll have plenty more from Alex Crawford and from Yusra Elbagir, who are both in Derna for us today throughout the morning. In the meantime, though, Iranian security forces have deployed troops and armoured vehicles to surround the grave of Mahsa Amini ahead of the first anniversary of her death. Her death in police custody sparked the biggest anti-regime protests in the country in 4 decades. Well, since protests erupted last year, more than 22,000 people have been arrested for taking part. 500 people have been killed in the unrest, 70 of them children. And there's been another wave of arrests ahead of Saturday's anniversary, with Mahsa Amini's uncle amongst those detained. Well, Sky's Zahar Zand travelled to Turkey, where she met a network of people who fled.
Dressed in black and armed with Molotov cocktails, these protesters are preparing to once again take to the streets. In response, Iran's cleric rulers have ramped up a widespread and intensified crackdown on dissent, often with horrific consequences. Behzad is one of those paying the price for daring to demand change in Iran. The father of 2 was shot in the eye during one of the protests by the security forces.
I was wearing a pair of prescription glasses. He fired, and the bullet went right through the glass and into my eye. Everything went black.
Behzad was helped by other protesters to escape and hide in a nearby apartment. One of them was Ines. She helped clean his wound, taking out the shots. And he wasn't alone. Hundreds were victims of the Islamic Republic's systemic targeting of the protesters' eyes.
There's a hospital called Fabi, which is known as the slaughterhouse. It was notorious because almost everyone who went there, more than 90%, ended up having their eyes taken out, even if it wasn't necessary.
Doctors were ordered to turn in protesters to the authorities. So after Behzad's eye was removed in the hospital, he was arrested. Behzad, along with many others, have been forced to escape to neighboring countries like Turkey, seeking safety and medical treatment. Do you ever regret taking part in the protests?
No. Not at all, because I fought for a free and prosperous Iran. Once Iran is free, all this pain and suffering will finally be forgotten.
Last September saw the beginning of a months-long anti-regime uprising across Iran, the biggest the country has seen in decades. The government's response was brutal. More than 500 were killed, around 70 of them children. Thousands were imprisoned and 7 were executed.
After the anniversary of Mahsa Amini's killing, a string of other anniversaries will follow, each marking the brutal crackdown by the Iranian regime. And each one of those dates will renew the anger, grief and trauma, carrying the potential for further unrest.
That is exactly what the Islamic Republic seemed to be trying to prevent at all costs. Families of victims, lawyers and activists are amongst those aggressively targeted. Shilan Mirzai is an exiled Iranian activist in hiding. Her days are spent supporting victims of the brutal crackdown. She's in touch with dozens of people in Iran on a daily basis who've been reporting an increase of pressure and harassment. Something that Shilan herself is grappling with.
Over the past year alone, my father in Iran has been arrested at least 6 times because of my activism. So has my brother and my little sister, who was threatened with rape. I want to say it loud and clear. I'm not scared of the Islamic Republic. Even if they kill my father, I will keep on fighting. I did ask my dad once, Daddy, if you tell me to stop, I will. And he said, don't mind what happens to me, even in the worst case scenario. We can't speak out for ourselves, but you can be our voice.
Sahar Zand, Sky News.
Now, over recent years, we've heard a lot about microplastics and how they've been harming the world's oceans and marine life. But the hope of a solution might be on its way. Our science correspondent, Thomas Moore, joins me now from Norway. So, Thomas, what might that solution look like then?
Well, just to explain, you might hear a bit of banging in the background. We're at an old shipyard where they're repairing boats, but this is what we've come to see. This is Hardanger Fjord. It's 100 miles long, stretches from the North Sea all the way inland into Norway. It's the 3rd largest fjord in the world, but it acts as a giant snare for plastic that's swept up the coast by the Gulf Stream, some of it from as far away as the UK. Now, we're going to be going out with a big boat and lots of volunteers. There's a giant clean-up in the fjord here today, about 100 boats, possibly several thousand volunteers, all trying to clean up plastic, not just along the shoreline, but also deep down. And some of it is here. This is fishing litter. These are pots and fishing ropes and so on. And all this, of course, is made of plastic and gradually breaks down. But although the weather is pretty miserable, there will be some buoyant volunteers because of new research that shows that microplastics could be dealt with, that if you remove macroplastic, the large bits of plastic, bottles, bags and so on from the shoreline, you actually rapidly reduce microplastic by 99%. Now that gives some hope that if we deal with the stuff we can see, that the rest of it will degrade physically and chemically because of ultraviolet light, because of temperatures and so on, and that this plastic crisis can be dealt with. So this is the first time that scientists have been able to show that, and it will lift the mood of the volunteers as they start to do this enormous clean-up today.
Fascinating stuff. Thomas, thanks very much indeed. Now it's time for today's sport. Jackie joins us now. Morning to you, Jackie. And things far from boring in the Rugby World Cup.
I know. Do you know the sad thing about it is you have to wait so long for the next match. Anyway, the next round of matches is here, finally. It started last night and France did not get it all their own way.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Mike, you had a successful career as a player. When did you realise that once your career as a player was over, that coaching and management was for you?
It actually dawned on me a little bit towards the end of my career at United. I got an offer from Norwich City to go back through Gary Megson, and would I take the reserve team.
Things developed for you at Manchester United. You ended up working with Sir Alex Ferguson. How was that experience working so closely with him day in, day out?
He took me there as a player and gave me 5 great years as a player and achieved so much in 5 years as a player with a great bunch of players and a really successful time. And then obviously I left, did a bit of coaching, or he released me, and then I moved on into the coaching side. But you know, I just got a phone call one day. I was being released from Stockport. The manager there got the sack, and then I was sort of on my way out, and I just got a call asking me to go and have a chat with him about, you know, being sacked, sort of thing. Never in my wildest dreams did I think he was going to offer me a job, but he did, and he asked me to come in and work with, again, sort of what was then the reserves. Which I jumped at the chance, really, and that lasted a year, and then I got promoted up into the first team set.
How was that relationship with him? Was he the kind of manager that liked you to challenge him?
Yeah, he was like that. He was very very much a leader. He led from the front, but he allowed you to work. The beauty of it with Sir Alex was he gave you that time, but he actually backed you. As long as he knew about what you were doing, how you were doing it, and how you wanted to progress it, he was right behind you. And that gave me a lot of opportunity, really, to really work and start to think deeper about things and think about making this a really long, successful coaching career.
And in that role, you worked with some fantastic players. Who were the ones that
So people like, obviously the ones obvious are Ronaldo, but the funny thing for me was I ended up coaching some of the players I played with. You know, the Beckers, the Giggses, you know, the Scholes, all these types, you know, they were coming through as I was just about leaving. And then obviously you have your Roy Keanes, these people, Ronaldo's come along.
Beckham, Rooney, Ronaldo, etc. Is it more difficult to coach them, or because they're fantastic footballers, do they just come to work every day with that ethic that we're going to strive to get better every day?
Yeah, the beauty at United was there was a standard there, and that standard was high. So any player that came in had to meet that standard, not just the standard that the manager put in place, Sir Alex, or the staff put in place, but the players put that in place. So that was a case of, you want to be here, you accept this, you keep the standard high, and you take that on.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Jackie, thanks very much indeed. Now, let me tell you what's coming up on Sky News Breakfast, because I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to be joined by the world's oldest female competitive ninja warrior after she swung into the record books.
In 2016, I was at a very stressful job, and I noticed that I had pain in my left side, in my abdomen, and I thought it was related to stress. Also, could it be my cycle? But then the pain persisted. I went to my doctor. He said, it's probably something to do with your cycle. So I went home. About a week later, I thought, no, this persisted. Went back to my doctor. Again, he said, something to do with your cycle, go away. I then went to see a female doctor because I thought there's something not right. You know, in yourself as a woman, something's not right. So I went to see her, and she said, oh, it's probably a cyst on your ovary, but I'll send you away for a scan.
Which sounds terrifying, to be frank.
Yeah.
It's probably just that.
It's just probably just very blasé, but, you know, I knew at some point I'd want to have kids. So to hear that was just awful. I went for a scan, ultrasound scan, and they found that I had 2 fibroids. So the lady said to me, you've got 2 fibroids. I thought, fibroids, what are those? So she said, go back to your doctor and he will explain to you. So I went back to the same GP, and he said to me, you've got 2 fibroids. They're very common. There's nothing to worry about. Just take an ibuprofen for your symptoms. So I had 6 years of pain where I literally had to plan my life around my periods. So I told you that I had pain in my abdomen that spread to the right side, so it was continuous pain. I had back pain, I had leg pain, I had extreme bloating,
I had a protruding belly, and the irony was, because I wanted to fall pregnant, I was actually infertile. Fibroids are non-cancerous tumours. So if you look on the NHS website, that's how it is described as. And 2 in 3 women, they suffer with fibroids, they will suffer with fibroids in their lifetime.
And this is a very common problem. I used to have I still do, have a fibroid clinic at St Mary's, where women would come in, they're very, very frightened, their lives are debilitated by their pain and their very heavy bleeding, and the bump that they see, as Dawn had just explained. It really is, it's very distressing, because people say, oh, are you pregnant? And that's what she wanted to be, but her fibroids will prevent. Campaign that we've launched today, the charity I chair, Wellbeing of Women, is trying to take away the dismissal and the sort of this isn't a problem, because it is a problem if women at the height of their careers or in their role as parents are disabled by pain and heavy bleeding and problems like this.
Now, it might not have been much of a summer, but apparently damp, warm weather is good for butterflies. Participants in the big butterfly count recorded 1.5 million butterflies over 3 weeks in July and August, and that's the highest number in the last 4 years. Let's talk about this a little bit more then. I'm joined by the Head of Science at Butterfly Conservation, Dr. Richard Fox. A very good morning to you. So is it the weather that's behind this uptick in butterfly numbers?
Good morning. Yes, I think it's definitely been a better summer for butterflies, as you say. People, an amazing 95,000 people took part in this summer's big butterfly count. So huge thanks to all of them for helping to gather this important data. And it was certainly a better summer for our butterflies than the previous summer. We were quite worried about the long-term impacts of the drought last summer and what impact that might have on our butterfly numbers this summer. And certainly they don't seem to have been quite as bad as we feared.
Well, yes, so good news or just better than last year?
Yeah, just better than last year and better than a few years. So on average, people saw 12 individual butterflies during their 15-minute count, whereas last year they only saw 9. So that is obviously good news. But it's important to look at our butterfly populations in the long term, because their numbers do go up and down from year to year as a result of the weather. And this year, today, we're publishing for the first time longer-term trends from the start of big butterfly count 13 years ago. And that shows that more species have declined in abundance, and these are the most common and widespread butterflies, than have increased. So overall, it is a bit of a gloomy picture, but it was lovely when the sun did occasionally shine this summer to be able to get out and see some butterflies.
And what more can be done to try to preserve our butterflies? Can people actively
is not due to the weather, it's due to the loss of habitat. And anyone who's got an outdoor space can help with that. So we're calling on everyone to create a wild space, a place where butterflies can live, can breed, can shelter, can feed from flowers, and to help boost numbers for next year. And that can be as simple as some pots of plants on a balcony or a patio, or it can involve letting some of the grass in your garden grow long. And we've created a fantastic new Wild Spaces website packed with tips to help people make a space for wildlife.
OK, well, Dr. Richard Fox, some good tips there. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now then, 71-year-old Ginny McCall has swung into the record books for being the world's oldest competitive ninja warrior after taking part in the American version of the obstacle course show. So let's find out how she did it. I'm delighted to say that Ginny joins me now from North Carolina. Ginny, thanks so much for talking to us. We do appreciate it, and congratulations for making it into the records book.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a surprise.
Was it a surprise? Well, if you see the video of you doing your thing, it's not a big surprise anyone who's seen that. Kick us off by telling us a little bit about what a competitive ninja is.
Oh, well, you have to have a lot of mental fortitude, for one. You have to really have a passion for what you're doing. And you have to be persistent and deal with, failure. But you just get up and try again. But you have to get very strong. And getting strong is a big part of the picture because it shows you what you can do. It gives you confidence. It's helpful for your health benefits. It can, make your bones stronger by lifting weights. It's an all-round healthy picture, and it's the best time of my life.
Well, yes, I mean, you're in your 70s, and yet looking at these pictures, it is extraordinary what you can do. You're incredibly strong and incredibly agile. What do you put that down to? Is it down to that sheer hard work that you talk about with your training, or is there a genetic contribution, do you think, towards your strength?
I definitely believe that there has something to do with genes, but it's also a very absurd determination. It's like when I wanted to learn to do a pull-up, which is one of the hardest things in the world, in my opinion, in terms of getting stronger. You just have to keep trying and trying and trying. And the joy of absolutely getting it is just tremendous accomplishment.
Some people watching might think, oh, it's too late for me to start doing this kind of thing. You have to train your whole life. But what would you say to them?
I started when I was 63 because I saw my daughter on American Ninja Warrior, and she had such grace and power and strength. And her muscles looked wonderful and healthy and feminine, and I wanted to get stronger. So I would say go to a personal trainer so you can learn how to do it properly. It's too easy to hurt yourself. So I think that's really important in the process. But have patience. And you can start at any time in life. In your 80s and 90s, you can grow stronger. You have to have the belief in yourself, and you have to just keep going and be consistent and create a habit.
I can't believe you started in your 60s. That's fantastic. But were you an athlete before that?
I had never been in a gym and I had never done any sports, but I was a dancer. So I grew up dancing and I went to New York to be a professional dancer. But dance and strength training are, I mean, both of them you want to get strong, but it's very different, different types of movement. And I didn't have the upper body strength. But you keep at it. It took me an entire year to get my first pull-up. But it was definitely worth it.
And what's your advice to anyone else who thinks, I'll give it a try?
Definitely do it. It's never too late to chase a dream. Find a buddy to work with. Start with walking and then grow from there. I would say to, just put armor around all your joints and make sure you warm up and you stretch after. And give it time. Learn how to fall properly, because there are a lot of those.
How long do you think you'll carry on doing this? I mean, when do you think you might stop? Have you got an age in mind?
Well, I'd love to be doing it when I was 80. I mean, why not? We'll certainly try for that. Maybe I can make another world record.
Well, I tune in and watch. You're an inspiration, Jenny McCarl. You're also doing this at nearly 3 o'clock in the morning for you. So that takes some stamina as well. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And congratulations.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Amazing. I feel slightly tired even talking about it. Let's take a look now at the weather.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, today will bring to some, but over the weekend it will become more widely unsettled with increasing heat and humidity. It's mainly fine across southern Britain, northwest Ireland and northern Scotland, but most other places have some rain. Much of Ireland, Northern Ireland and southern Scotland will stay dull and wet through the morning with localised flooding possible. The far north of England will have some rain too, while northern Scotland will see just a few showers. Strong winds over Shetland will ease, and meanwhile the southern half of Britain will be mainly dry and sunny. It's going to be warm there, cool under the rain elsewhere. And the afternoon will be pretty similar, but central and east Scotland will turn increasingly wet.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Now then, time is running out for sky gazers even, or stargazers across the UK, to potentially witness the Northern Lights. Colours of the phenomenon, also known as the Aurora Borealis, were captured in the skies across the UK earlier this week. The Met Office forecast suggests they will be visible to the naked eye along the northern horizon from Scotland, where skies are clear, but only until tomorrow. The lights may also illuminate the sky in Northern Ireland and Northern England, so if you live there, look out the window. Stay with us. Lots more coming up on Sky News Breakfast. Don't go anywhere. Hello everyone, it's 8 o'clock. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. More than 11,000 people are now confirmed to have died in Libya in what's the worst flood disaster in Africa's recorded history. It's Friday, the 15th of September.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm inside Derna in the worst affected area, in the worst affected town, and we're with the rescue teams who are still hunting for the thousands still missing.
We're just downstream of the dam that collapsed and released a catastrophic flood on the Libyan city of Derna.
Adequate early warning system. Also ahead, the father, stepmother and uncle of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif are charged with her murder. President Biden's son Hunter faces criminal charges over allegations that he lied about his use of drugs while buying a gun.
And I'm about to join an enormous clean-up in Norway, where scientists have the first evidence that clean-ups really work for the environment.
In sport, the Manchester United winger Jadon Sancho is training alone after a row with his boss Erik ten Hag. And the hosts France survive a big scare to beat Uruguay at the Rugby World Cup.
Hello, very good morning and welcome to Sky News Breakfast. Libya's Red Crescent says 11,300 people are now known to have died in the coastal city of Derna. The scale of the humanitarian disaster is unprecedented. This is the worst flood disaster in Africa's recorded history. Well, people desperately need help, but they also want answers about why there was no adequate warning system in place. Well, Sky's Alex Crawford and Yusra Elbrigir have reached the city of Derna, and they both join me now live. Alex, our special correspondent, to you first of all. You've managed to get inside the city of Derna, so tell us a little bit about what you found there.
Yeah, two Sky teams inside Derna, the most devastated town affected by Storm Daniel, and we're with the rescue teams. You can see we've been up here very early this morning, having travelled all the way through the night, and now the military have turned up. Those men in blue are some of the health workers, and they are part of the search and recovery team. I say recovery team because there's been very few people brought out of here alive, and they're basically trying to bring closure to those many thousands of families who have lost relatives or don't know where friends are, or who once lived here and have seen this entire city pretty much levelled in the centre. Look at the scale of this. If you just look at that building there, look at the state of it and how it's virtually buried. Behind it, with a pointed triangle roof, that's the front of the mosque, which has been turned on its side, and it's landed and been swept away along by these gallons and gallons of water, some 50 metres from where it should be, which is where Jake's now pointing his camera. This is the front of the most religious Islamic site in Derna, certainly, and certainly one of the most religious sites in the whole of the country, where a grave for very significant followers of the Prophet Muhammad has been utterly swept away. And you can see vehicles and residents and the front of the mosque utterly destroyed. The whole of this area is quite extraordinary. It's been very quiet when we first arrived, and now it feels like there are pockets of people, some soldiers, some health workers, who are basically picking through a massive, huge graveyard, because all this area used to be high-rise blocks of flats, houses, homes, shopping malls, schools, bridges. Jake's got his camera pointed at what can barely resemble anything, but is actually the remaining foundations of one of the biggest bridges. And all the way along here, every bridge is like that, in tatters. This big block of cement here is part of the foundations of a bridge. It weighs, I don't know, hundreds hundreds of thousands of tons, and it's just been lifted up and shunted along. The locals talk about this crash, this huge crescendo of noise. Small amount of time to get out of the way. And this is a storm, Storm Daniel, which had been sweeping across a number of Mediterranean countries. So they had many days to prepare for this. Instead, in some cases, they were told to stay in their homes. And we've been talking to some of the survivors who said some of the people went to sleep that night thinking that they were safe. And then this utter torrent, this vicious sort of bang of water just came through here and lifted buildings, literally lifted buildings, ripped the whole sides off, and the whole, you can imagine the massive torrent of water, because it was, they're talking about it being, you know, something like 30 meters high, this massive tsunami of water which cut a swathe and has cut the city in two. And we're on one side of it, and there's more rescue work going on the other side. And you can see now soldiers, health workers, people in hazmat suits, blue workers, many of them wearing masks, because there is quite a strong smell of corpses in the air. Brought utter devastation to this city.
Well, yes, and as you say, a scene of extraordinary devastation that you're showing us there, Alex. The need for help must be enormous. So just how much help is getting in?
It feels like it's extremely small fry, even from the actual resident authorities. It's very small groups. You know, we're not sort of hiding anything from you. All you can see are these small little pockets of people and this huge area where there is, everywhere you look, you turn around and it's houses, flats, apartment blocks, all flattened and brought to the ground, and underneath are bodies, family, friends, relatives, you know, that people are searching for. There's what appears to be a convoy just coming in now. That's the first one we've seen here so far, and I don't know what they're bringing. We've not seen any international representation here from international aid groups, and a number of the people of Derna are telling us, we understand that there is help from UK, that there is help from France, that Turkey's bringing in aid, but where is it? Because the residents are saying they're not seeing it. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about the routes in being crowded, and certainly some of the routes are very, very crowded, with hours and hours and hours of vehicles backed up on roads leading right out of the city, which is clogging the way in. But it still leaves a lot to be explained about where everyone is in this, what is clearly a massive disaster, huge challenges ahead. And these are challenges which many of the Libyans feel date back many years, back to the 2011 Arab Spring, what was euphemistically called the Arab Spring, where NATO backed a military campaign to oust Colonel Gaddafi, the dictator who was in charge here. And in his wake, the country was filled with weapons and very little help, or certainly insufficient help, to rebuild it, and most importantly, to put a lot of emphasis on strong governance. Instead, there are two separate governments or authorities, one in the east, which is run by Haftar, a former Gaddafi commander colonel who runs this area like a fiefdom, and the west, which is backed by the UN. The country is filled with people smugglers, mafia, corruption, extreme poverty in many cases, and extreme wealth in small pockets. It's really quite a basket case, and because of what happened, the events of 2011, it's never quite got back on its feet. The dams, which Yusra is going to tell you about in a minute, were not sufficiently kept up to date, nor were any more built. We've been speaking to structural engineers who talk about how this was extreme negligence, and they want people to pay for what's happened, and that is thousands and thousands of deaths.
Alex, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's get more from the scene now. Our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Bagir joins me by one of the dams which burst near Derna. And Yusra, tell us a little bit about what you can see there.
Here in the valley, you can see just a stream now from what was a catastrophic amount of water. And as
Well, it looks like we have lost that link to Yusra El-Brigay, who's there near where one of the dams breached in Derna in Libya. The most extraordinary scenes of devastation. The latest figures are that 11,300 people are confirmed to have died, but it's thought that figure will go a lot higher. I understand that we have re-established that link to Yusra. Yusra, you were starting to explain what had happened where you are.
I mean, we're now on the grounds of a school, and as you can see, the school's been completely ripped apart by the floods. And we were told that people who sought shelter here, that left their houses further downhill, came up here, were completely swept away. The wall that encased the yard of the school is completely destroyed. And we've been told by residents that a family of 27 people, men, women, and by the waters, and their house that they fled from is just under this hill. Are looking, you can see just the shock, the awe, some of them hunched over, the feeling of just complete, you know, again, like just a complete lack of acceptance or understanding of how this could have happened, how there was no forewarning. The National Meteorological Survey has said through the World Meteorological Organization that they did warn government officials, that they did send out emails warning them. And I've been told by people here that that is not the first time they've warned, that there could be devastating flash floods, that they actually even advised that maybe the dam should be destroyed. I mean, but all of this was ignored, and people here feel utterly let down. They've told us we just feel completely let down, and you can see it on their faces. But you can also see it in the fact that how will they rebuild this infrastructure, that there's no real promise that they will find homes again, those that have survive, that they will be able to come and bring their children to this school, that it will be renovated. There is no guarantee that any of this will reap any real repair or actual closure.
Yusra El-Brigay there near Derna in Libya. Thanks very much indeed, and we'll have plenty more coverage from Yusra and from Alex Crawford in Libya throughout the day, of course. In the meantime, though, the policing minister, Chris Philp, has told this programme that the government is making it quicker and faster to dismiss officers who shouldn't be wearing the uniform. But he rejected calls from a woman arrested at the vigil for Sarah Everard, who has since received substantial damages, that the Met should be disbanded. Well, earlier this year, a report found that the force is institutionally sexist, misogynistic, racist and homophobic.
I think it's important that we keep Londoners safe, and the that is the Metropolitan Police's job. I've got confidence in Mark Rowley's turnaround plan for them. I was at a meeting yesterday with him and the Mayor of London. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, of course, is responsible for overseeing the Met politically. I think the turnaround plan is so far making progress, and I don't think disbanding the Met would help Londoners.
Well, joining me now is the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. What's your view on this? Should the Met be disbanded, as one of these women who've received a payout from the Met Police has suggested?
Good morning. Well, we clearly need reforms to policing, obviously, particularly to the Met, but across the country as well. Not just to address some of the issues that we have seen in the past, some of the awful cases involving particular officers like Wayne Couzens, but also to make sure that the police can be there in local communities, can actually be responding to crimes, can be increasing the charge rate. A lot of the things the Conservatives haven't done.
So I don't think not be disbanded.
No, I don't think that that's the right approach for the Met. I think what we have to do is have a proper turnaround plan, and I think that Mark Rowley, the Commissioner, is doing the right things, but a lot more needs to be done. But there has to be more government support. I think the Conservatives have really not taken seriously the issue about police standards. So we still don't have national vetting standards, for example. Well, that's just ridiculous. We still don't have rules in place that mean if an officer is being investigated for a rape or domestic abuse, they should be automatically suspended. They're not at the moment. I think that's a failure of national standards, and is the Conservatives not taking it seriously.
OK, I want to talk about your migration policy because the Labour Party's been spelling this out in the last day or so. You have been saying that you wouldn't criminalise everyone that comes to this country in a small boat, as the government are. So would the illegal migration bill be scrapped under Labour?
So it's already unlawful to arrive, whether it be on a small boat and other routes as well. That has been since about the early 1970s. So we're not proposing to change that. The government's asylum legislation that they brought in just simply hasn't worked. I mean, we can see the consequences. We've still got these dangerous boat crossings that are putting lives at risk, but also undermining our border security. And criminal gangs have been allowed by the Conservative government to take hold along the channel. They haven't done the action needed to tackle it. So we're setting out action to smash the criminal gang networks that are ending up supplying these boats and dangerous boats and ending up undermining our border security. But we're also setting out today changes that will get some common sense back into the asylum system and save the taxpayer £2 billion by ending hotel use, clearing the backlog and getting fast-track systems in place for safe countries where people should be returned.
OK, well, let's talk about what Keir Starmer was talking about in terms of seeking an EU-wide returns agreement with the EU for asylum seekers who come to Britain. He's talked about a quid pro quo on such a deal, such as accepting quotas of migrants from the EU. So what might that deal look like? How many migrants would Labour be prepared to see come from the EU under a deal?
So that's not the proposal we set out yesterday. What we set out yesterday was a new security agreement, a security partnership with Europol, other police forces, and additional police officers and staff to go after the criminal gangs. That's what we need to do. That's what we were in The Hague talking to Europol about yesterday. Secondly, we set out new plans to clear the backlog, to fast-track returns, save the taxpayer £2 billion. There's been a lot of total garbage being talked by the Conservatives.
But Keir Starmer talked about a quid pro quo, so what did he mean?
So we do also want to have a returns agreement with the EU that would need to be properly negotiated. And we set out, for example, we think that that should include a safe routes for children who have family in the UK, who are currently ending up, the only way they can rejoin family is to get on a dangerous boat. What we're clearly not talking about, which the Conservatives have been talking about, is joining the EU asylum dispersal scheme for member states that involves quotas and things like that. Nobody's proposing that. We are not member states. We're not a member state, and we're not going to be a member state. So that has just been totally made up by the Conservatives. It's just total nonsense.
And if we're outside the EU and we're outside the Schengen area, why do you think we'll get a better deal? Because we're not in those zones. I mean, if you were talking about returning people to the EU, we have to take something back, don't we?
You've proposed is, for example, for children, for the children who have family in the UK. We used to have an agreement where there were some returns. There were also controlled safe routes for children with family in the UK, for other people who had a particular family in the UK, who currently simply end up getting exploited by people smugglers. So we think there is a sensible route that you can take. There is a sensible process that you can get into a negotiation. But it has to be something that works for the UK. It has to be something that ends up tackling the criminal gangs who are doing such huge damage and who have been allowed to let rip along the channel by the approach the Conservatives have taken. And then alongside that, let's sort out the chaos in the asylum system. Let's stop using RAF Scampton, the home of the dam busters, or all of these really costly hotels. Clear that backlog, actually get those decisions made, because the decision-making has collapsed under the Conservatives. The whole system's broken. Let's get common sense back.
The government says by doing a deal with the EU, the Home Secretary is saying that Labour wants to hand Brussels the keys to our immigration system.
Yeah, and you see, this is just total garbage. They are making it up because their system isn't working. And because they've failed, they've literally allowed the criminal gangs to take control of our borders rather than us having proper border security and a proper system that works. So as a result of their failures, because we've got more people than ever now in hotels, they're ending up just blaming other people. I think what most people want to see is a strong border security and also a properly controlled and managed asylum system, because all countries need to do their bit to help those who fled persecution and conflict. That includes the UK. But at the moment, what we've got is we haven't got any of those things, because we've got the undermining of our border security with the criminal gangs, And we've also got total chaos in the asylum system, with the taxpayer literally having to pay billions of pounds. We could save £2 billion for the taxpayer if we go down this route.
I just want to ask you about HS2, because there are reports that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are considering scaling back plans for it. Would Labour commit to extending HS2 to Manchester?
Well, we have long supported, the Labour Party position has long been to support HS2 and to have proper infrastructure around the country and rail infrastructure and so on. I think we're just in this totally chaotic situation now where we seem to have the Conservatives setting out these plans that have now cost billions of pounds more than they said it would cost, and also talking about not getting to the centre of London and not getting Manchester. I mean, who knows what the chaos is that is going on at the moment. So Labour's policy hasn't changed, but we do want to see what on earth the government is doing, because they do look like they're letting communities down.
Well, if they were to cancel that leg of HS2, would Labour commit to reinstating it? Will Labour commit to building HS2 as far as Manchester?
Well, Labour's been clear that the position is that they should be delivering HS2.
But will Labour deliver that?
Be doing, and that's what we're calling for. That's what the party has called for and supported. So what I don't understand is why they seem to be making such a mess of something that seems to have just got more costly, more chaotic, and they're not delivering. It really
just to be absolutely clear, so Labour is saying that if you come into power, HS2 will go to Manchester.
Well, that's what Labour's calling for. That's what Labour has always supported. But the problem is they seem to be just undermining all of the things they said about whether it's levelling up, about the rail infrastructure, all of these things. It's just chaos. And this just is the result of 13 years of everything being broken. It's really damaging the way that they're running the country.
OK, Yvette Cooper, we appreciate your time. Thanks very much. Let's take a look now at some of the day's other main headlines. And President Biden's son, Hunter, faces criminal charges over allegations that he lied about his use of drugs while buying a gun. The 53-year-old is the first child of a sitting US president ever to be prosecuted. More than 40 flights have been cancelled or diverted because of a lack of staff in air traffic control at Gatwick Airport. The airport apologised for any inconvenience caused and urged passengers to contact their airline for information. The consumer watchdog Which says that supermarket loyalty schemes are often not as good as they appear to be. Which says that Sainsbury's and Tesco's are inflating the regular price of some items so that promotions look better. Both supermarkets say that Which's analysis fails to take account of inflation and insisted that they adhere to trading standards rules. Now, the father, stepmother and uncle of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif have been charged with her murder. Her body was found at her home in Woking last month. Well, here with me now is our correspondent, Rachel Venables. Hi there, Rachel. Tell us more.
Well, of course, it's more than 5 weeks since the body of 10-year-old Sarah Sharif was discovered in the empty family home in Woking in Surrey. And now we hear overnight that Surrey police have charged, they've been given authorisation for that charge from the Crown Prosecution Service, 3 people, 3 family members with her murder. Now, they are her dad, Irfan Sharif, who's 41 years old, his partner, Benash Batul, who's 29, and his brother as well, so Sarah's uncle, Faisal Malik, who's 28, all of them from Hammond Road in Woking. They've also been charged with causing or allowing the death of a child. Now, you'll remember the trio were arrested almost immediately after they got off a plane at Gatwick Airport on Wednesday evening, the flight landing from Dubai. We know that they travelled out to Pakistan the day before her body was